headed for another record as the conflict between the U.S. and Iran, which drove futures down as much as 1.7% yesterday, has not escalated. Tech's leading the advance for now. Jim Glassman, J.P. Morgan Chase senior economist, tells Bloomberg he does not believe in bubbles in equities, at least not right now.
I look at the multiples in the stock market. They're not crazy like they were in the 1990s, and yet the value of the market relative to the U.S. economy is so much bigger. So that's telling you it's not really about bubble phenomenon. It's really more about something transforming going on in the U.S. economy and the global economy.
We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day here on Bloomberg Radio. They just keep edging up. S&P has edged up 0.6% so far, up 20. The Dow's up 0.6%, up 180, and the Nasdaq's up 0.9%, up 81. The 10-year is down 6/30 seconds. The yield is 1.89%. West Texas Intermediate crude oil is down 0.75% at 59.16 a barrel, with COMEX gold down 0.8% at 15.4810 per ounce. The dollar yen stands at 109.55. The euro's $1.1001, and the British pound $1.3047. Verizon says its Fios video and internet service will abandon the cable industry tradition of locking customers into long-term bundled packages, the latest effort to contend with the rise of cord cutting. They're calling it mix and match and say it lets consumers choose among a variety of video channel packages and internet router speeds without signing an annual contract. Right now, Verizon is up 0.5%. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Bloomberg Markets continues now with Lisa and Paul.
Thank you so much, Greg Jarrett. It's time now to take a look at small and mid-cap shares. Dave Wilson, Bloomberg Stocks Editor, here in our interactive studios with us, and he has a very official box tie on today with little boxes on it, no cartoons. We're also seeing gains there. Can you give us a sense of that and save me from myself?
Why should I start now? In any case, hey, well, you asked for it.
It's fine.
Hey, people will be able to see the tie later today because, of course, the Bloomberg Business Week show is now part of the Bloomberg,
it's on YouTube.
Global News
live
on YouTube.
Yep.
Absolutely. You got it. In any case, for the moment, we can focus in on smaller companies and say they're not doing quite as well as the larger ones, but they are up. The Russell 2000 index higher by 0.4%, and the S&P 500 is up 0.6%. Now, the Russell's biggest gain belongs to Axonics Modulation Technologies, the ticker AXNX. This company is a medical device maker. Preliminary revenue for the fourth quarter was almost twice analyst average estimate in the Bloomberg survey. Zynex, ticker ZYXI, is up 21.5%. Fiscal third quarter sales at this medical device maker beat projections, and Zynex raised its fourth quarter revenue forecast. Lindsay, ticker LNN, has added 13.5%. The farm machinery maker reported fiscal first quarter earnings that surpassed the highest projection. Now, the Russell's steepest drop belongs to a company which you'll no doubt be talking about soon, Bed Bath & Beyond, ticker BBBY. The home furnishings chain is down almost 19% after posting an unexpected loss for the fiscal third quarter. Sales fell 8.3% at stores open more than a year. And Solid Biosciences, ticker SLDB, has dropped 13%. The developer of a treatment for childhood muscular dystrophy plans to cut 1/3 of its staff. And the chief operating officer and chief medical officer are leaving.
Bloomberg Stocks Editor Dave Wilson, thanks so much for that color on small caps. I'm looking at WTI crude oil here, trading down 42 cents a barrel to $59.20.
Biggest three-day decline since September of last year.
Thank you. SINS is the function you're looking for. WTI hit 63 and change just a few days ago, but here we are down below 60. Let's get a sense of where crude is trading and all things energy, gas, and all that good stuff. Stephen Shork, president of the Shork Group, based in Villanova. Stephen, thanks so much for joining us on the phone. Give us your sense of where you think crude is headed, given that maybe that geopolitical risk is kind of coming out of the market here.
Yeah, I just think Lisa just encapsulated it the best, saying that we've had the largest three-day decline since September. And what happened in September? We had an unprecedented drone attack that knocked out a major oil facility, Saudi Aramco. Now we've got a three-day decline after the United States takes out a major key Iranian figure. So I think it's safe to say that geopolitics, as we once knew it in the oil market, ceases to exist. If you cannot get oil prices, a sustained bid in oil prices on these two headlines, then that is your clearest telltale that this is not your father's market at this point. So where are we at this point? Well, to your point, we were at $63 in the immediate aftermath. When we look at the way the options market has been pricing this market through the first 6 months of this year, a considerable amount of overhead protection was sold in that $63 to $65 range. Conversely, a lot of downside protection was sold in that $55 to $53 range. So the option riders, these are typically the smartest men and women on Wall Street, are telling you where they're assessing risk, and they're telling you they do not expect to see oil prices much above the mid-60s or much below the mid-50s. So we are range-bound, as we have been for the past 2 years in this market.
How's the positioning more generally for the long investors? Do we have a sense of that?
Absolutely. I know there are some real positive headlines. Apache just came out today with a major find off the coast of Suriname, next to the Guyana, where Exxon is extracting barrels now. So long term out, there is a position in the market that at these levels, price levels, and that, as I said, in that range in between the mid-50s to the mid-60s, that certainly is a comfortable range with a potential drift or upward skew over the next few years.
So, Stephen, what is your demand side model kind of telling you now? Is it maybe, because I know recently, when the trade tensions were riding higher, there were really concerns about global demand for everything, including crude.
Yeah, absolutely. And everyone's going back to the drawing board with their elasticity models because we all now have to factor in the rapid rise of substitutes in this market, the ongoing effect of demand decay that is occurring because of EVs. And once you switch over to an EV, whether it's a gasoline plug-in hybrid like I have or a full electric vehicle, that is oil demand that is never coming back into the market. So we're really into uncharted waters at this point. And now it's a guess as to when oil demand is going to peak. I guess the recent estimates or the more conservative estimates have it peaking somewhere in the mid-2030s. I'll just venture the only reason why you would make a projection that far out is because you're trying to make astrology look respectable. But at that point, in the here, in the now, demand has been strong. Over the summer, there were concerns about recession. All the chattering class now are talking about just ongoing consumer health. I just want to put the caveat out there that the U.S. industrial side of the market, which is about 1/8 of the economy, is in recession at this point. So certainly when we're looking at the demand models, the lack of industrial demand growth is certainly weighing on the market and weighing on price. And that we expect will continue through the remainder of this year.
Stephen Schork, so great to get your perspective. Thank you for being with us. Stephen Schork, president of the Schork Group, talking about oil. And I think that that really does play into the theme that we've been hearing, that really it's range bound between the 53 and low $60 a barrel kind of range here, as it has been for a long time. And I guess where it falls, though, in that range is kind of pivotal when it comes to the shale producers, right? I mean, that's been something we've seen, whether it's looking at the debt markets or the equities in shale.
Right, because they were just a few days ago coming to the debt markets, raising capital based upon, I guess, in part, the higher oil prices that we were seeing. And that's very timely because here we are, we've pulled back right back down.
Literally, their CFOs were just ready to pounce. They pounced from the one day that the price was up, and then they got out with their financing in hand. Right now, you're seeing crude falling the most for 3-day period since September 2019. Right now, let's head down to our Diamond Studios in Washington, D.C. Nathan Hager with world and national headlines. Nathan.
Lisa, powerful congressional Democrat now says he misspoke when he urged House Speaker Nancy Pelosi to lift her hold on articles of impeachment. This morning, House Armed Services Chairman Adam Smith told CNN Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell will ultimately be responsible for a fair trial against President Trump. Now, Smith writes on Twitter, if the Speaker believes holding on to the articles for a longer time will help force a fair trial, he wholeheartedly supports that decision. Pelosi is holding her weekly news conference on Capitol Hill as we speak. She tells reporters she is still waiting for details on the Senate trial process before she delivers the articles of impeachment. Today, the House votes on a resolution aimed at limiting President Trump's authority to wage war against Iran. That's as Vice President Mike Pence defends the president's decision to take out Iranian General Qasem Soleimani in a Baghdad drone strike last week.
Thanks to the decisive action that President Trump took Qasem Soleimani off the battlefield, sent a very clear message.
Pence on ABC's Good Morning America. In an interview with Fox News, Pence said Iran is sending a message to its militias now not to go after U.S. targets. The brigadier general who leads Iran's aerospace program says its forces launched 13 missiles at U.S. bases in Iraq, but are ready to launch hundreds. The New York City Bar Association is asking Congress to investigate Attorney General William Barr. In a letter to leaders from both parties, the group says Barr's recent actions and statements have positioned the Justice Department and its prosecutors as political partisans. This appears to be the first time any bar association has asked Congress to investigate a sitting Attorney General. Global news on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. This is Bloomberg.
Our relationship with Asia is simple. Find the most experienced journalists.
These countries will need each other more and more in the future.
Let them gather the best data and experts.
Let's get to Singapore now and our guest.
Then bring everything they find straight to you.
Let's talk about where you are. There's quite a lot of headwinds there too.
Actually, it's not simple. It's just better. Bloomberg Daybreak Asia, tonight at 6 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Melissa from Michigan. I work an extra part-time job serving lunch at my child's school, but I still can't afford to put food on our table.
Daniel from California. Choosing whether to pay the rent or pay to fix the car to get to work doesn't leave us with much at all. Now we can't even pay for meals.
Hunger is a story we can end. End it at feedingamerica.org. Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
The market's in focus every business day. The P&L Podcast with Paul Sweeney and Lisa Abramowitz.
Are there some sectors that you want to have more or less exposure to?
What's behind this engine of gains?
Analysis of the day's Wall Street action.
The U.S. market looks relatively safe.
From Bloomberg Intelligence, Bloomberg Opinion, and influential newsmakers.
Ward McCarthy joins us right now.
P&L with Paul Sweeney and Lisa Abramowitz. Listen today on Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, or subscribe on Apple Podcasts.
My mother was always very active and independent, and she was familiar with her neighborhood. But one day, she stopped at the stop sign for much longer than usual. She wasn't even really sure where she was at.
It's important for you to talk to someone about it. I felt so much better after my son told me, Mom, we'll figure it out.
When something feels different, it could be Alzheimer's. Now is the time to talk. Visit alz.org/ourstories to learn more. A message from the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad.
Take the helm and ignite your spirit of adventure with a Sunsail holiday. Relax on a skippered yacht from sunny St. Lucia to the nutmeg-scented shores of Grenada. Or take charge with a bareboat charter along Dubrovnik's glittering coastline. With up to 20% off selected destinations, now is the time to book your Sunsail adventure. Sunsail. See the world differently.
Welcome to Nuffield Health Battersea, a gym built around you. You get regular health MOTs to create a plan that works for you, with physios and personal trainers on site. You'll find a wide range of equipment and classes, and our expert team will support you to get the most out of your health, fitness, and your membership. Join today to get the rest of the month free. Search Nuffield Health. Specialists in you. 12-month commitments only. Facilities stated are in most gyms. Visit nuffieldhealth.com/terms.
Dad, I'm doing the mashed potatoes too.
Do the Albert Bartlett potato mash.
Do the twist.
Do the patatas bravas with a British twist.
Yeah. Do the brown sauce, balsamic and chutney.
Oh, do the melting potato slices.
Do the dishes.
Grab a brand new recyclable bag today and do the Albert Bartlett.
He's got a brand new bag.
What if your email let you see a project's entire history and not just the messages sent to you? What if everyone else on your team could see it as well? Then it wouldn't be email at all. Move communication from inboxes to channels in Slack. Instead of seeing a partial set of messages about a project, everyone in Slack sees exactly the same thing and moves work forward faster. Slack. Choose a better way to work. Get started at slack.com.
I spy with my little eye something beginning with B.
Bike.
Nope. Banana tree.
Oh, of course. We must have missed it.
Although you might not be able to see it, your small actions can have a real impact with Shell. Drive carbon neutral by filling up and using Shell Go Plus today. Make the change. Drive carbon neutral. Shell. Go well. See goplus.shell.com/CO2 for details.
At Asda, our baby event is now on. Get Dove baby lotion. Was £2.50, now only £1.55. And the Tommy Tippy Perfect Prep Machine was £100, now just £60. Great brands, great prices. Don't compromise. Asda, save money, live better. Selected stores and lines subject to availability.
This is not a cat. This is not a rocket. And this is not a sale. That's right. At Smarty Mobile, we're not having a sale. While others are slashing prices, we're introducing our best ever new plans. Take our new 30-gig data SIM for just £10 a month. With unlimited calls and texts and no speed restrictions, credit checks or contract tying you down, why shop around? New plans, great value. Now that's Smarty. Grab yours today. Search Smarty Mobile. See smarty.co.uk for terms.
At Argos, our sale is still on and so much more, with new products added. Go online to shop our full range of amazing deals, including home, tech and toys. Get same-day home delivery 7 days a week. With Argos, you're good to go. Subject to availability, selected lines, delivery conditions apply, order by 6 p.m, 90% UK coverage.
I've always loved a kitchen experiment, especially smoothies. I've all sorts of mad combinations. Strawberry and charcoal, broccoli and chocolate. Not my best, that. But when I test blenders in the Witch Lab, it's not about flavour, it's about performance. Our tests use proper tough stuff, hard ice, strong veg, rough nuts. And the blenders that can hack it are the only ones we recommend for your kitchen.
Which tests harder so you can buy smarter. Visit which.co.uk.
Headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Markets are humming as stocks hit record highs again today. This all as Middle East tensions have eased and a China-U.S. Phase 1 deal appears to be ready to be signed next week. We look at the numbers every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg Radio. S&P's up 0.6%, up 19. The Dow's up 0.6%, up 184, and the Nasdaq's up 0.8%, up nearly 80. The 10-year is down 5/30 seconds with a yield of 1.89%. West Texas Intermediate crude's down 0.8% at 59.12 a barrel. COMEX gold is down 0.75% at 15.4830 an ounce. Dollar yen 109.54. Euros $1.10.96 and the British pound $1.30.48. Confidence among Americans surged to the best level since October 2000 on brighter views of the economy and finances, adding to signs that consumers will continue to underpin a record-long expansion. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
You're listening to Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Well, the tale of two retails continues, where you have the Amazons and the Targets and the Walmarts of the world doing really well. And then there's everyone else, in particular Kohl's and JCPenney, both seeing stock prices that are almost 10% right now. Joining us to talk about that is our very own Poonam Goyal, senior retail analyst for Bloomberg Intelligence. Poonam, both stores coming out with disappointing sales for the holiday season. Is this execution failure, or is this something more profound?
So for JCPenney, the comp decline of 7.5% sounds extreme, but it actually met their own internal plan, which is why they didn't cut guidance further. So guidance has been maintained there. So internally, they're executing two plans. I wouldn't call it an execution issue, rather just an issue with customers choosing to shop elsewhere, which has been the trend for a long time now. At Kohl's, I think you could blame execution, especially on the women's side, where women's sales are where they struggle to meet plan. And if you recall, they had added so many initiatives back in September, October with 9 West, with Property Brothers. All of that newness should have drove traffic to stores. And they have Amazon too, right? The Amazon returns. But while that helped, it wasn't enough, it seemed.
So this is just, correct me if I'm wrong, just a continuation of a long slide in the retail, for the department stores in particular, in their ability to compete against, I guess, some of the online rivals and maybe even some of the bigger box stores like a Walmart or something like that. And I'm looking at the stocks. Kohl's trailing 12 months, down 32%, JCPenney 20%, Macy's down 40%. Is there any bull case for the U.S. department store industry?
You know, it comes back down to, can they reinvent themselves to be a place where people want to shop again? And right now, these stores are too large. They're, on average, outside of Kohl's, they're over 100,000 square foot in size. They have too many brands. They're confusing. They target a broad audience. So they're not connecting with that consumer that wants to kind of go in and go out.
Which is the whole department store model.
It is. So it needs to change.
Okay.
But there is a department store that's changing, and we haven't heard what their holiday sales are yet, and that's Nordstrom. Okay. So if you think about Nordstrom, they have the local concept, and that's a concept for the consumer of the future.
And that's working. And that's working.
And that is working. It's actually doing really well. They have a few locals in New York City that they just opened.
What's a local?
A local is a store without any inventory. So you go in for services, you go in to be styled, you go in to pick up your orders, you go in for even a manicure or pedicure, you go in for alterations.
It's not a store
in your
anymore.
neighborhood.
It's not a store
It's
anymore.
an experience.
Okay.
And that's
experience
what's
getting
working.
your hair done. All right, so I'm just wondering, when is JCPenney going to go under? I mean, is this basically moving them closer to that, especially if they have an execution issue?
Well, right now, they don't have a liquidity issue, so we have 2 years, I believe, at least, before they have the debt maturing, which they need to think about. But until then, they have time to turn the business around if they can. They're testing a store, which they call a studio test store in Texas, where they're just basically adding in a lot of newness and testing to see what works. And, hopefully something can work, but I still think they need to close more stores.
All right, let's shift gears to Bed Bath & Beyond. Shares there absolutely plummeting after coming out with a pretty dire projection. But this sort of struck me as a playbook that has been done over and over again by chief executive officers that are new coming into the field. And I'm looking right now at shares down nearly 20%.
Yeah, Bed Bath & Beyond, so you have to give them a little bit of credit still, because Mark Tritton, who's still new, he came from Target, he was the CMO there. You would think that they can change the assortment where they can make Bed Bath a Target destination again for home. And Target's done a great job at that. And you can see that with their signature categories outperforming. So if he is able to do that, there could be a future for Bed Bath & Beyond. I just think it's too early to say that they can't turn things around. People still love to shop there. They just shop on discounts. So how do you turn that customer to shop full price or near full price?
So, Poonam, I remember a while ago you made the comment to me that the U.S. retail business, the footprint is still, we're overstored in the U.S., like a big percentage overstored. Kind of give us a sense where we are. How many stores do you think across the U.S. have to be closed down to kind of rationalize a business where not everybody goes out and shops anymore?
Yeah, I think it depends on each retailer, right? So if you look at the department stores, and we go back to that, JCPenney with over 800 stores, Kohl's with over 1,100 stores, there probably needs to be more right-sizing done there. But when you look at a Nordstrom with only 100-plus full-line stores and more local expansion, they can still grow that local concept. We've seen a lot of stores go out of business. Pier 1 just announced its bankruptcy. So stores are closing, and they continue to close. And keep in mind, we're in a really good consumer spending environment right now. So I think you're going to start to see an escalation in store closings when that environment turns, because that'll really be the true test to see how many of these stores can still pull in traffic and pull in sales when the consumer turns.
We were talking earlier about the fact that the American Dream Mall in New Jersey has a 90% fill rate.
I'm going to guarantee that Poonam has been there.
I have not, because stores are not open there. Stores are
not open.
Yeah,
yes,
they
opened this spring.
Inside,
okay,
right?
Exactly.
An ice skating rink. So I'm just wondering, can we even call this a mall, or is this basically the quintessential transformation to an experience?
It is absolutely an experience. I mean, they haven't even opened stores there yet. So it's literally Legoland and the ice skating and the skiing and all of that. So you go there not to shop. You go there for the experiences, and the shopping is available while you're there.
But 90% of the stores have been filled already.
They have, yes. So we'll see in April.
Does that shock you?
I mean, look, people want to be where traffic is. Stores want to be where the traffic is. So if they're going to get traffic, then they want to be there.
That's a vote of confidence by the retailers in this concept.
Well, Paul, you ski. Would you want to ski inside a mall?
No, thank you. I mean, there's enough in New Jersey.
Okay, would you do it? That's my question.
I would do it.
I would do it.
Yeah.
Why not?
All right, we'll do a Bloomberg Markets Day over at the, what's it called over there? The Dream Mall?
The American Dream Mall.
The American Dream Mall.
Let's do it.
All right, we'll get the Bloomberg, chopper. We'll Sikorsky on over there. Poonam Goyal, thanks so much for joining us. Poonam is the U.S. retail analyst for Bloomberg Intelligence, joining us here in our Bloomberg 1130 studio, giving us his thoughts on some of these holiday retail sales coming out from the department stores, showing continued, I think, kind of headwinds as the department stores try to rethink their concept in a world where people are shopping more and more online. Do you need to go to a big department store? Not so much, and that's kind of what we're seeing quarter after quarter. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Stocks jumping higher this morning on signals from both the U.S. and Iran that there is no desire for further escalation. Still, the Pentagon said it is too early to tell what Iran will do next. HP, again, has turned down an unsolicited takeover offer from Xerox. The personal computer maker said the deal significantly undervalues the company. Xerox had lined up $24 billion of financing for a potential acquisition. HP said its restructuring plan will provide greater value to shareholders. Boeing's costs would rise an estimated $5 billion if pilots need to get simulator training before flying the 737 MAX. So that's according to Bloomberg Intelligence. That would nearly double the $5.6 billion that Boeing had committed to cover costs from last year's grounding of the jetliner. And the popular Chase Sapphire Reserve card is about to get more expensive. JP Morgan is about to boost the annual fee for the card from $450 to $550. Courtney Donahoe, Bloomberg Radio.
Listen, as a hiring manager, I've got to tell you, the best job candidate isn't always the typical candidate. Sometimes they're a grad of life.
Meet the grads of life. Young adults of unique determination and experience. An ideal fit for your company in an entry-level position, internship, or mentorship. They might not have every qualification you typically look for, but they're exactly who your company needs.
Sometimes the best candidates aren't the ones you're used to.
Go to gradsoflife.org to learn how to find, cultivate, and train this great pool of untapped talent. Brought to you by the Ad Council and gradsoflife.org.
What if you could keep the top economic experts in a conference room next to your office without having to feed them?
Do we need better optics? Do we need some substance?
Do CEOs care about ESG?
We have seen quite a lot of stimulus pumped into the system already.
It's the biggest warning yet about the financial risks of climate change.
Now there are more ways to hear us. Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com and iHeartRadio apps, and at BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Here at Tesco, we're celebrating over 100 years of great value with even more great prices that take you back. Like a 500-gram tub of Anchor Salted Spreadable from £3.50 to just £2. All this week at Tesco.
Selected largest stores subject to availability. Offer ends 14th of January.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? We've got you covered. With TuneIn Premium, you can listen to every NFL game live as it's happening.
LaShawn McCoy has an opening on the right side, punches into the end zone for the touchdown.
Or catch it later on demand.
Offset backs behind Mahomes. The give is to Williams. Starts right, cuts it back to the left, and blows into the end zone for the touchdown.
You call the plays. Follow the NFL anytime, anywhere, all season long with TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today.
Pascal gobbles up the rebound and slams it down.
Catch your favorite NBA team right here on TuneIn.
A step back, deep three is up and in.
Search NBA on TuneIn and hear all the action. The NBA lives on TuneIn.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
On the goal line, scores and takes it home.
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
Here's Pietrangelo, he scores!
Hear the action live on TuneIn Premium.
And a move, and a shot,
from regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium.
Upgrade today. Did you know your favorite radio stations are in your pocket? Yes, the TuneIn app lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio anywhere you want. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
Ah, finally another commercial, said no one ever.
Visit tunein.com/premium to upgrade now and get over 45 commercial-free music stations.
Next time you look up at the stars, think about this.
Inside you are the remains of a stellar explosion. You are made of stardust. And without the stars, there wouldn't be us.
I'm Guy Raj, the wonders of the universe and the people who still look up every night. Next time on the TED Radio Hour from NPR. You can subscribe to the TED Radio Hour on TuneIn.
We can't make traffic move faster during rush hour. But we can help you catch up on the news with TuneIn. With live around-the-clock news from MSNBC.
In the UK, they're significantly worse. When the president gets up to the podium...
CNBC and Fox News Talk.
The Fox News poll sizing up the race for 2020 found that each of the 5 top Democrats...
You can use your stop and go for good by staying in touch with the world. Search news to hear what's happening now.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Markets.
Coming up, we're going to get the latest on impeachment from Washington, D.C. with Anna Edgerton. Plus, we're going to take a look at how markets are just shrugging off any geopolitical risk. What are the implications of the complacency? Right now, though, let's head over to Greg Jarrett for a Bloomberg Business Flash. Greg.
Lisa, the S&P is headed for another record if things keep going the way they are. This all is being credited to the relaxation of tensions between the U.S. and Iran, which yesterday, you'll remember, drove futures down as much as 1.7%. Tech is leading this advance, as it often does. Toby Gibb, Fidelity International Head of Investment Directing, tells Bloomberg he is not so concerned about the high valuations of many tech stocks right now.
I think one of the areas that I am somewhat concerned about is the quality growth momentum areas of the market, which have been bid up. Even though we've been in a bull market, there has still been a focus on security, a focus on safety from investors, and they've been investing in these sort of stocks as a result. When you look at the money that's flown into low volatility ETFs, into momentum ETFs, etc., that does seem to be an area where there is an element of froth, I'd say.
We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day here on Bloomberg Radio. The S&P 500 is up 0.6%, up 19. The Dow's up 0.7%, up 194. The Nasdaq's up 0.8%, up 75. The 10-year's down 4/32 with a yield of 1.88%. West Texas Intermediate crude is down 0.2% at 59.52 a barrel. COMEX gold's down 0.6% at 15.50.80 an ounce. The dollar yen 109.50. The euro $1.1101, and the British pound $1.30.59. Bed Bath & Beyond shares have plummeted to their lowest intraday level since November 25th after the home goods retailer pulled its year forecast after third quarter results missed estimates. Right now down 18.7%. Down 18.7%. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Well, the Iran news of the last few days has surprisingly put the impeachment story a little bit on the back burner, but it is reasserting itself today. House Speaker Pelosi holding a press conference earlier where says she will send over the impeachment to the Senate when she is good and ready, but she says it will be soon. To get the latest, we welcome Anna Edgerton, U.S. Congress Deputy Team Leader for Bloomberg News. She's based in Washington, D.C. to get the latest. Anna, thanks so much for joining us. Again, we had Speaker Pelosi giving a press conference this morning. What was your takeaway and kind of what's the next steps here?
Well, you were right in your intro when you said that impeachment has kind of been on hold, but as much because Pelosi is actually holding up the process. She hasn't impeachment articles over. So that's the next step. We need her to name the impeachment managers from the House that are going to, kind of prosecute the case in the Senate and actually, send the articles over so that the Senate can start the trial of President Trump. So she did say today that she is not going to hold those indefinitely. She repeated that she wants to have a better idea of the arena in which the trial is going to happen, meaning that she wants to know kind of the format and more details about what to expect so she can actually figure out who she's going to name, how many impeachment managers they need, and some of the details of the procedural steps.
What is the conflict around whether or not she sends it to Senate at this point?
There's not really one, which is why it's kind of mystifying as to why she hasn't done this. It almost seems to be a bit of a messaging exercise from Democrats to highlight that Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, a Republican, doesn't want to call additional witnesses. Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, a Democrat in the Senate, has insisted that the Senate trial include at least 4 Trump administration officials that declined to testify in the House. Now, Mitch McConnell doesn't want to decide that now. He wants to leave that for a second phase of the trial after they've already heard the House impeachment manager argument and the White House's defense. But, it kind of seems like Democrats are just using this as an opportunity to highlight Mitch McConnell's preference for trial strategy, which doesn't really seem to be getting them anything concrete at this point.
So, Anna, is this going to just end up with Pelosi and McConnell getting in a room together and hammering this thing out? I'm just not sure the timing here.
Yeah, I think they're actually past the point of getting in a room together. I think if that were going to have happened, it would have happened already. So this is probably going to come more from pressure within the Democratic caucus. We did see yesterday some Senate Democrats start to get a little bit antsy, saying like, okay, we're going to do this process. Let's go ahead and get it started with. Because the longer this drags out, the closer it gets to 2020. Members of Congress are running for re-election. There are 5 Senate Democrats who are also seeking the presidential nomination. So it just gets messy the longer that she holds on to this. And I think most people in Congress and most people around the country just want to get it over with.
And the presiding sentiment in markets is that this is a non-event for them, that this will not threaten President Trump's tenure in office, and that it will eventually fizzle out. Is there any risk whatsoever from a market perspective? Is there a real possibility that President Trump could go ahead and get impeached with an actual trial and even potentially ejected from office?
It's a safe assumption that this is not going to be a game changer. I don't think that there's any chance that President Trump will get actually removed from office, because it would take 67 senators to vote to convict him in the Senate, which is just kind of an inconceivable margin when you look at how closely Republicans have stuck with him thus far.
Okay. Well, so let's just say that it's basically going to be a sort of formality at this point to go through with, because we all know it's going to happen. Is there anything material that could come out that would have longer lasting consequences during this kind of trial procedure?
Well, we have seen some additional information come out about the allegations, especially regarding the president's actions in Ukraine. And so the more that we see about what administration officials knew, when, how uncomfortable they were with what the president was ordering his aides to do, how directly the president himself was involved, that could have an impact on the 2020 election, but probably isn't going to change the outcome of the impeachment trial. So what we're looking at really from this point on is just kind of political shots being taken back and forth, and kind of more material evidence coming out that could damage the president's kind of public messaging defense, if not his actual impeachment defense.
Anna, within the Beltway, is there any sense who has the leverage here, Pelosi or McConnell? I'm just not sure how this is going to break.
Yeah, Pelosi doesn't have any leverage here, which is a point that Republicans have been making over and over again, and which is why, I've been kind of mystified watching her hold this up, because she's usually such a brilliant, has such brilliant strategy when it comes to kind of parliamentary procedure. There's not much that she or Chuck Schumer can do to influence the structure of the Senate trial. Now, once we get into the Senate trial and actually that gets underway, it would take only a simple majority to set Senate procedure. So that means that if 4 Republicans join with Democrats to call John Bolton, for example, the president's former national security advisor, that we could conceivably see a subpoena from the Senate for his testimony. But that's really going to be a matter of Senate Democrats making the case, not Nancy Pelosi.
Hey, Anna, thanks so much for joining us. We really appreciate your commentary and thoughts. Anna Edgerton, U.S. Congressional Deputy Team Leader for Bloomberg News in Washington, D.C., bringing us up to date. Looks like we're starting to get a little bit of movement again. Speaker Pelosi had a press conference earlier this morning. Nothing new other than she will send the articles of impeachment to the Senate, but she doesn't feel pressure as it relates to timing. So, again, it seems like there's a little bit of this stalemate between the House and the Senate right here as to next steps for the impeachment process. We will, of course, keep you up to date on the latest. Right now, let's head down to our 99.1 studios in Washington, D.C. for world and national headlines. So, Nathan Hager. Nathan.
Well, as that stalemate continues, Paul, Senate Republican Lindsey Graham, the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, is saying the time is now for for Speaker Pelosi to turn over those articles.
I just believe that the dam is broken, that when Senator Feinstein says, if you think it's urgent, act as if it's urgent. I can't believe she can sit on this another few days. If she doesn't act, we will.
Meantime, House Armed Services Chairman Democrat Adam Smith now says he misspoke when he told CNN that Pelosi should move the impeachment articles over to the Senate. Later today, the House votes on a war powers resolution aimed at limiting President Trump's authority to wage war against Iran. This as Vice President Mike Pence tells ABC News.
Those of us who have seen all the evidence know that there is a compelling case of an imminent threat against American personnel, and President Trump was right to act to take the world's most dangerous terrorists off the battlefield.
Not every Republican sounds convinced, though. Senator Mike Lee of Utah told reporters yesterday after a classified briefing that officials struggled to come up with details of the imminent threat Soleimani posed. President Trump is proposing a dramatic overhaul of one of the country's landmark environmental laws. The main change would be to limit requirements for federal review of projects under the National Environmental Policy Act to projects with major federal funding. Such a change would mean a range of privately funded and managed projects would not have to assess the environmental impact of their work. This change is almost certain to face a legal challenge. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Nathan Hager. This is Bloomberg.
Why has J.D. Power ranked Commonwealth Financial Network #1 in independent advisor satisfaction among financial investment firms for the 6th straight time? We think it comes down to one thing: you. Because it's your input and feedback that keeps us focused on what's most important to you and your clients and continually pushes us to be the best we can be. Maybe that's why we receive top marks in every category of the J.D. Power 2019 Advisor Satisfaction Survey. They named us #1 in client support, #1 in firm leadership, #1 in operational support, #1 in compensation, #1 in professional development support, and #1 in technology support. Ready to partner with the best? Call Commonwealth at 866-462-3638 or visit commonwealth.com and feel the power. Member FINRA SIPC, a registered investment advisor. For 2019 J.D. Power award information, visit jdpower.com/awards.
25 years ago, NJIT graduate Dick Sweeney co-founded Keurig Green Mountain, a company whose incredible innovations changed the way the world brews a cup of coffee. Today, he lectures widely on business leadership and is a strong advocate for NJIT's work to combine business education with the power of STEM.
NJIT is definitely fostering the innovative thinking for budding entrepreneurs simply because that's the world we live in. NJIT is producing students that have been trained, educated, and given the business acumen to be a contributor to a company. The distinct mission is to develop great STEM scholars. The attributes I've always looked for in team members are heart, smarts, guts, and luck. So we want people with passion, intelligence, courage, and never discount luck. The student coming out of NJIT has experienced all of that.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Here at Tesco, we're celebrating over 100 years of great value, with even more great prices that take you back. Like a 280-gram Tesco stone-baked pepperoni pizza, now half price from £3.50 to just £1.75. All this week at Tesco.
Selected largest stores subject to availability. Offer ends 14th of January.
The NBA is on TuneIn Premium.
Pointer by Anthony Davis. It's good!
Each week, TuneIn picks an NBA game you just can't miss. Two of the top teams in the Western Conference go head-to-head. This Sunday, the Clippers are at the Nuggets. Tip-off is at 8 p.m. Eastern.
Three ball on the way. He got it to go! Three from the angle. Got it!
Search NBA to follow your favorite NBA team today.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have access to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards, at the goal line, it's intercepted!
Listen live as the action unfolds or on demand. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught. Get it to the right side for the touchdown to Keenan.
Search NFL today. Hey, NFL fan. Can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards at the goal line. It's intercepted.
Listen live as the action unfolds or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught. It is in for the right side for the touchdown.
Search NFL today.
We can't make traffic move faster during rush hour. But we can help you catch up on the news with TuneIn, with live around-the-clock news from MSNBC.
In the UK, they're significantly worse. When the president gets up to the podium,
CNBC and Fox News Talk.
The Fox News poll sizing the race for 2020 found that each of the 5 top Democrats.
You can use your stop and go for good by staying in touch with the world. Search news to hear what's happening now.
Cutting for the net. Scores! Along the goal line, Marshawn scores!
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
And tucks it home!
And with this team, it's really fun to be a part of a team like that.
You can hear the action live on TuneIn Premium. From regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium.
Upgrade today.
Hello, I'm Nat Coombs from ESPN's The Nat Coombs Show, which admittedly is 1 out of 10 for original podcast name, but 10 out of 10 for NFL chat. Every week, we're dropping 4 episodes with an all-pro lineup of terrific guests, journalists, comedians, players, coaches, you name it, all getting you up to speed with everything gridiron. The Nat Coombs Show, American football, British accent. Add to your favorites and listen on TuneIn.
This is not a commercial. This is a reminder. With TuneIn Premium, you could be listening to more music commercial-free. Get over 45 commercial-free music stations. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
Want to know a quick, easy way to see if your favorite podcasts have a new episode available? Just go to the home screen on your TuneIn app and see the latest editions under the Your New Episode section. Happy listening.
Right now, we're going to take you to the White House, where President Trump is answering questions from reporters after talking about the Phase 1 deal with China.
Maybe we do, but he never showed up. All of a sudden, they don't talk because they were really unexpectedly met with the actual conversation, the exact conversation. So, yeah, if we do that, I would like to have those people, plus others, testify, because it's the greatest hoax ever perpetrated on the United States government. This has gone on since the day I came down the escalator. This isn't just here. This isn't just the Ukraine hoax. This is the witch hunt. This is the whole thing with Russia. That turned out to be a total fabricated plot. The ones who are guilty are the Democrats, the DNC, and all of the dirty cops that were involved, that we caught. Yeah.
Mr. President, I'm sure you saw Mike Lee's comments. Did your national security team really say that it would be wrong for Congress to debate military action on Iran?
So here's what happened on that. I had calls from numerous senators and numerous congressmen and women saying it was the greatest presentation they've ever had. Mike and Rand Paul disagreed because they want information that honestly I think is very hard to get. It's okay if the military wants to give it, but they didn't want to give it. And it really had to do with sources and information that we had that really should remain at a very high level. Could we individually maybe give 1 or 2 of them some information? Possibly, if we can do that. I get along great with Mike Lee. I've never seen him like that. But other people have called and they've said it was the best presentation they've ever seen. And let me tell you what was the best. Forget about presentation, the result. We killed a man who killed many, many Americans and many, many people. Thousands and thousands of people. And when I go over to Walter Reed and I meet these young, incredible folks, mostly, it just seems mostly men, but also women, where their legs are gone, their arms are gone. In some cases, both the legs and the arms are gone, and the face and the body is badly damaged. And frankly, 5 years ago, they couldn't have lived, and today they can live because of the wonders of medicine and the wonders of Walter Reed and the people over there, what the job they do, the medical doctors. But I will say this, we caught a total monster, and we took him out. and that should have happened a long time ago. We did it because they were looking to blow up our embassy. We also did it for other reasons that were very obvious. Somebody died. One of our military people died. People were badly wounded just a week before, and we did it. And we had a shot at him, and I took it, and that shot was pinpoint accurate, and that was the end of a monster. And that was the second attack. We didn't start it. They started by killing one of our people and wounding badly other of our people. So that you call retribution. Ukraine, if you look at what happened with Ukraine, that's a hoax. Well, this is a hoax too. Iran went in and they hit us with missiles. Shouldn't have done that, but they hit us. Fortunately for them, nobody was hurt, nobody was killed. Nothing happened. They landed, very little damage even to the base. They landed. But we had a chance to take out a monster. We took him out, and it should have been done a long time ago.
Would you go to Congress to take further military action against Iran? Would you seek congressional approval?
It would all depend on the circumstance. I don't have to, and you shouldn't have to be able, because you have to make split-second decisions sometimes. Sometimes you have to move very, very quickly, John. But in certain cases, I wouldn't even mind doing it. So, you know what bothers me? When I see a Nancy Pelosi trying to defend this monster from Iran who's killed so many people, who's so badly, I mean, so many people are walking around now without legs and without arms, because he was the big roadside bomb guy. He was the one who'd send him to Afghanistan, had sent him to Iraq. He was big. That was his favorite thing. He thought it was wonderful. He doesn't think it's wonderful anymore. When Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats want to defend him, I think that's a very bad thing for this country. I think that's a big losing argument politically, too. Yeah.
So anyway, outside the JCPOA and also with total sanctions implemented, what's left?
Well, just understand on JCPOA, it's close to expiring. In other words, if I didn't terminate it, it expires in a very short period of time. One of the problems, of which there was many, $150 billion, $1.8 billion in cash, all of that money, and then that money was used for terror. Because if you look at Iran, it wasn't so bad until they got all that money. They used that money for terror. That's when it became really bad. You just take a look. I mean, it really got bad when they had $150 billion, $1.8 billion in cash. The agreement, I always call it the Iran nuclear deal that didn't work. The Iran deal, it was just something that is no good for our country. It expires in a short time. That means they would be on their path to nuclear weapons. And for me, it's about nuclear weapons more than anything else. Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. Iran will never have a nuclear weapon. They understand that. We have told them very strongly. Iran now is not wealthy like it was when President Obama handed them $150 billion. They're a much different country. We'll see whether or not they want to negotiate. Maybe they want to wait till after the election and negotiate with a weak Democrat, somebody like a Biden or a Pocahontas or Buttigieg or one of these characters. Okay, maybe they want to wait. But I think they're probably well off doing it now, because if you look at the polls and if you look at what's going on, we're doing very well. They're losing a tremendous amount. They're getting hurt very badly by the sanctions. It all can end very quickly. But as to whether or not they want, that's up to them. Not up to me. It's totally up to them. They can straighten out their country. Iran right now is a mess. They can straighten out the economics of their country very, very quickly. Let's see whether or not they negotiate.
Leverage today.
On these sanctions, when should we expect to see sanctions on Iran following the attacks?
Immediately. It's already been done. Yeah, we've increased them. They were very severe, but now it's increased substantially. I just approved it a little while ago with Treasury.
Who will they be against, and what sort of sanctions?
Well, you'll see. I mean, we'll put out a minor announcement. It's actually a major event. It's like this. This is to me a major event, and so far I have had no questions on the fact that we can build a highway in, a small fraction of the time, that we can build all of these beautiful bridges that we want to build, but they can't get approvals. I've had no questions on that. Are you shocked, Sean, when you hear that?
No,
I mean,
Mr. President.
honestly, they should be having some questions. Okay, yeah, John, go ahead.
Mr. President, the plane that went down from Iran, what do you think happened to that plane?
Well, I have my suspicions. It was very, I don't want to say that because other people have those suspicions also. It's a tragic thing when I see that. It's a tragic thing. But somebody could have made a mistake on the other side. Could have made a mistake. It was flying. It was flying in not our system. No, it has nothing to do with us. It was flying in a pretty rough neighborhood, and somebody could have made a mistake. Some people say it was mechanical. I personally don't think that's even a question, personally. So we'll see what happens. I don't know. I really don't know. I don't want to get... That's up to them. At some point, they'll release the black box. Ideally, they'd get it to Boeing, but if they gave it to France or if they gave it to some other country, that would be okay, too. I think, ideally, that will be released. I have a feeling that it's just something very terrible happened. Very devastating.
Mr. President, the situation in Venezuela has not gone as smoothly as some people, likely even yourself, have hoped. What are you prepared to do?
Well, I never thought it would go smoothly. Venezuela hasn't gone smoothly since it became a socialist or worse than that country. So I never expected anything to go smoothly. We'll see what happens with Venezuela. They're doing poorly. I mean, there's a great case when I say this country will never be a socialist nation. There's a great case. It was a wealthy country 15 years ago, 20 years ago. That was like a really wealthy country. And now they don't have water. They don't have food. We're supplying a lot of food. We're supplying a lot of water. So, no, it takes a period of time. It's been, I've only been here a relatively short period of time. We'll see what happens.
Are you prepared to do anything else? Change?
Well, I'm not going to say that. No, we have a good strategy, but we're taking care of people. We're helping people. Colombia is helping a lot of people. Some of the nations surrounding are helping people. But I think we're doing a good job. They have a system that right now is very broken. We'll see what happens. Stay tuned.
President, Mr. President. Blow up the embassy in Baghdad. Can you provide more details on what that plot was?
No, I think it was obvious. If you look at the protests, and this was the anti-Benghazi. Benghazi was a disaster. They showed up a long time after it took place. They saw burning embers from days before. I said, get out today, immediately. They were saying, we think we can have them tomorrow. I said, nope, they got to go right now. And they were on their way very quickly. And they got there they got there quickly. They could have done that with Benghazi, too, by the way. Same thing. Had they gotten there, had they done what I did, you wouldn't know the name Benghazi. It would not be a very famous name. Now it's a very famous name. This was the anti-Benghazi. We got the Apaches there very quickly. They were doing the flares. People didn't know what was happening. But if you look at those protesters, they were rough warriors. They weren't protesters. They were Iranian-backed. Some were from Iraq, but they were Iranian-backed, absolutely, and they were looking to do damage, and they were breaking the windows, and, those are very structurally strong windows, as you know, and they were almost through, and had they gotten through, I believe we would have either had a hostage situation or we would have had we would have had a lot of people killed. Those people were going to do very serious harm. They were soldiers, they were warriors, and we stopped it. That was a totally organized plot, and you know who organized it. That man right now is not around any longer, okay? And he had more than that particular embassy in mind.
President, did you have a problem with John Bolton testifying in the Senate trial?
Always got along with him. He didn't get along with some of our people, but that's really going to be up to the Senate. It's always up. I don't stop it, no, but he would, it would be now. I'd have to ask the lawyers because we do have to me, for the future, we have to protect presidential privilege. When we start allowing national security advisors to just go up and say whatever they want to say, we can't do that. So we have to protect presidential privilege for me, but for future presidents. That's very important. I would have no problem other than we have to protect. We have to be able to protect. People can't go up and say whatever my thoughts are, whatever your thoughts are about us, countries, views. You don't want that to be out. So we have to protect presidential privilege. Yeah.
So, Mr. President, you said yesterday you want NATO to do more. Could you be a little more?
I did. I spoke. Right. I spoke to.
Indication from them that.
I spoke to him yesterday. I spoke to Secretary General yesterday, and we had a great conversation. He was very. I think he was actually excited by it, and I actually had a name. NATO, right? And then you have ME, Middle East. You'll call it NATO-me. I said, what a beautiful name. NATO, I'm good at names, right? USMCA, like the song, YMCA. Everybody, nobody could remember USMCA. I said, think of the song, YMCA. Now everybody says it. They don't remember the previous name of a bad deal, okay? Commonly known as NAFTA. No, if you add the two words Middle East at the end of it, because that's a big problem. That's a big source of problems. And NATO me, doesn't that work beautifully, John? Think of that. NATO plus me. And he's not getting it. He's not smiling. He used to smile. Before Iran, he was smiling. Now he's not smiling.
President, more troops.
You know what I'm talking about.
More NATO personnel in the region, is that what you're saying?
As opposed to us, to be honest with you, because this is an international problem. And we can come home, or largely come home, and use NATO. This is an international problem. We caught ISIS. We did Europe a big favor. We got 100% of the caliphate. We have thousands and thousands of ISIS fighters are killed, and thousands, tens of thousands are in prison right now. And Europe doesn't want them. It's not right. They want to go to France. They want to go to Germany. They want to go to UK. They want to go to these countries where they came from. That's their home. The U.S. is not their home. They want to go. It's not fair that we're holding these people and that other countries aren't taking because we're bearing the cost. So I think that NATO should be expanded and we should include the Middle East. Absolutely. And we pay for a big percentage of NATO. And by the way, if you look at and speak to Secretary General Stoltenberg, who's doing a terrific job, by the way, he will tell you that I raised $130 billion more than they were getting. It was going down from past administrations every single year. It was down to a very low number. I came in, I said, got to pay, folks, got to pay. We're working with you, we're protecting you, we're a part of this, you got to pay. We don't want to be the fools like we have been for so many years. So we raised $130 billion almost immediately. We had a meeting with all of the countries. I said, you got to pay. I mean, I can imagine they don't like me as much as Obama and other people, but I got to pay. We're protecting you, got to pay. We got $130 billion more, not 130 more. In fact, my biggest fan in the whole world is Secretary General Stoltenberg, because he can't believe it. And now he just announced $530 billion we've gotten under my watch. And so we're in great shape with that whole situation. And I think NATO should be helping us now with the Middle East. Having an international flavor there is good. Plus, you had a deal signed with many of these countries that are in NATO. So, the economic deal with Iran. So I have actually said that I think the scope of NATO should be increased, and they should be looking for ISIS. Will help, but right now the burden's on us, and that's not been fair. But we've done a great job with ISIS. When I came in 3 years ago, ISIS was all over the place. It was a disaster, and now ISIS is the caliphate. 100% of the caliphate is gone, 100%, and we have tens of thousands of prisoners. Well, we have them in prison. But they should be taken, and Europe should be helping with that burden. But I like the idea of NATO expanding their views.
Since the environment is part of the issue we're talking about today, since the environment is something that is on the table here today, what is your position on global warming? Do you think it's a hoax?
No, not at all. Nothing's a hoax. Nothing's a hoax about that. It's a very serious subject. I want clean air. I want clean water. I want the cleanest air. I want the cleanest water. The environment's very important to me. Somebody wrote a book that I'm an environmentalist. It actually called The Environmentalist, actually, before I did this. But they wrote a book. I'd like to get it. I have it in the other office. I'll bring it to my next news conference, perhaps. I'm sure you'll be thrilled to see it. I'm sure you'll report all about it. But, no, I'm a big believer in that word, the environment. I'm a big believer. But I want clean air. I want clean water. And I also want jobs, though. I don't want to close up our industry because somebody said, you have to go with wind or you have to go with something else that's not going to be able to have the capacity to do what we have to do. We have the best employment numbers we've ever had. We have the best unemployment numbers we've ever had. So that's very important. All right, one more.
How much of your own money are you prepared to spend on your re-election?
I literally haven't even thought about it. I spent a lot on the first one, and I said I did the primaries, and obviously that came out to be very successful. And I have not thought about it. I will say this, because of the impeachment hoax, we're taking in numbers that nobody ever expected. You saw the kind of numbers we're reporting. We're blowing everybody away. Nobody's ever taken in the money that we're taking in from the public. And it's good because it's an investment they're making. They're making that investment. It's better than the big donors. We're taking in numbers that nobody has ever seen before, frankly. And it's a great thing.
2016 by saying that you wouldn't take donor money. Well,
I don't know. I put in a lot. Do you know the number that I put in? Do you know the number I put in for the primaries and for the first election? What do you know that number? It's a big number. And I to this day say, I wonder if it mattered, because I never noticed myself getting any credit for that. I did. I spent a lot of my own money, tens of millions of dollars, times a lot. But I spent a lot of my own money. And I always asked the question, I said, I wonder if it was necessary, because I don't think anybody even knew that I was spending it. I'd mention it every once in a while, but I don't know. For instance, I give up my salary. It's $450,000, approximately $450,000 presidential salary. I give it up. It goes to, usually I give it to drugs. I give some to Elaine, sometimes for transportation. But every quarter, I think it's paid on a quarterly basis, I give up 100% of my salary that I make as president. I don't think anybody's written that story. You guys don't want to write that kind of a story, but that's okay with me. Listen, I'm going to Ohio. Some of you are coming with me, and we look forward to it. I want to congratulate all of you, because I think this is going to make a tremendous difference in your unions and for your workers and for your investments and for everything. This is going to be a fantastic thing. We'll bring numbers down from 20 years to less than 2. We'll bring them down from 10 years. I really think that you'll hit much less than 2, even for major projects. And I want to thank everybody for being here. It's a great honor. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
We have been listening to President Donald Trump coming to us from the White House, and it bears repeating exactly why he was speaking at all. It was actually because of revisions being made in the National Environmental Policy Act. These are revisions that are supposed to make it more possible, more quickly, to have infrastructure projects. And that's why we saw behind the president a number of construction workers. That was why he was there. But actually, most of what he had to say had to do with Iran and, of course, the strikes against the General Soleimani and then the retaliation by Iran in turn. We're going to turn now to our chief Washington correspondent, Kevin Cirilli. So, Kevin, I noticed what the president said was, number one, we're going to have sanctions against Iran increased immediately, according to him. Also, he'd like NATO troops, actually, to replace some U.S. troops in the region.
Precisely. And in fact, the president saying that those sanctions has already been implemented and that Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin sometime within the next 24 hours will announce them formally in some type of statement. The president saying that those sanctions are coupled with already sanctions that are already in place. You mentioned NATO. The president praising the head of NATO, Stoltenberg, as it relates to him trying to build an international coalition to help, quite frankly, I'm told, take some of the geopolitical pressure off of the United States and to spread it around to U.S. allies in NATO, including European allies, where a top State Department official is headed within the next week. Beyond that, the president also making comment regarding that Ukraine flight that was shot down, reportedly, according to CBS News, by Tehran. The president speculating openly about how he feels that flight had gone down. He said that it was, quote unquote, flying in a dangerous neighborhood. Either way, it's just further adding to the intrigue about that particular flight, David.
Yeah, it was striking. The president specifically said he does not believe it was mechanical failure. He said he didn't want to go into why he thought it was, but he didn't think it was mechanical failure. And it's quite a turnaround, actually, with Jens Stoltenberg. Remember their early meetings, they were fairly testy. At the same time, the president had some things to say that I think will be controversial, such as claiming that the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, actually has defended General Soleimani. I suspect that will not go down well in some quarters.
No, I don't think it will either. And in fact, when I've been talking with Democrats within the past couple of days, all of them have, I haven't found one Democrat who suggests that Soleimani was a good actor. They've all described him as a bad actor. He also took aim at Utah Senator Mike Lee, a member of his own party. Senator Mike Lee joining Kentucky Senator Rand Paul, another Republican. Both of them have been critical of the president in terms of how he has bypassed Congress for his military approach. The president saying that the the information that those two senators wanted is up to the military to release. He also suggested that maybe he would be willing, or the military might be willing, to share that information one-on-one with those lawmakers. I was struck by President Trump saying, quote unquote, "I've never seen him like this," referring to Senator Mike Lee. I've never heard the president refer to a key ally of his in that regard. Either way, this legislation making its way in the House and the Senate is all but virtually not going to ever become into law. The math isn't there in the Republican-controlled Senate, David.
Yeah, and as you know, Kevin, on the other side, Senator Mike Lee saying he'd never seen a briefing like that. He thought it was just ridiculous. He was very outspoken on the question. So there's a lot going on up there. Thanks so much to Kevin Cirilli reporting from the White House. And now we go to Sean Donnan in Washington on trade issues, because the president also talked about trade, talking about the Phase 1 deal that's supposed to be signed next week with Liu He when he visits Washington, but also saying Phase 2 negotiations should start immediately, Sean. What are we looking forward to?
Yeah, that's really interesting. The Chinese overnight finally confirming what the president tweeted out last week, and that is that they will be here in Washington January 15th to sign that Phase 1 agreement. Liu He, the vice premier, coming over. The president today saying that was a significant percentage of the overall deal. This is a deal, of course, that leaves out a lot of the harder issues that the administration initially was hoping to tackle in its negotiations with China, but does include a whole lot of farm purchases and other purchases of American exports. What's interesting about what the president said about Phase 2 right there is that while he said negotiations would start right away, he said he didn't think an actual Phase 2 deal would come until after the November election. As recently as a few weeks ago, he was saying via Twitter that he thought he may even be heading on a plane to China later this year to close a Phase 2. So a lot of questions about what comes next.
Exactly. On the one hand, expect it to start right away. Don't expect anything to get done anytime soon, and maybe after the election. At the same time, we still don't know what's in those 86 pages, do we, in the Phase 1?
Well, we know the administration has briefed out the outlines of what's in there. We know there are some commitments on intellectual property. We know that there will be some lines on currency. We obviously know that there is this big commitment on purchases there. The administration is starting to circulate a text. We're told that folks up on Capitol Hill are starting to have a look at it in secure areas, and we should see it finally released a week from now after this signing, and we will all be diving into that text to see just how much substance there is to this agreement. But the big important point here is, will China live up to its promises? And secondly, will they ever have a Phase 2 agreement that would deal with some of the more prickly issues?
Two big questions, no question about it. Thank you so much to Sean Donnan reporting from Washington. Now it's high time we got to check on the markets. Abigail Doolittle is here, and it looks kind of like a risk-on day.
It's certainly a risk-on day. It really feels like the fourth quarter of 2019, that big rally that we saw in that final quarter of the last year, where there was day after day of record high. That's what we're having once again, record highs right across the board here. What really stands out, David, the fact that the emerging markets today having their best day since September, that's a further out part of the risk continuum. So it tells you just how willing investors are to stretch for yield, for risk, bonds trading lower. And here in the U.S., what's leading us higher, once again, technology. We have tech at another all-time high. Apple, the biggest point boost there, another all-time high there. Jefferies raising their price target, saying that the holiday season was pretty strong. Chip strong, AMD on fire. So again, just a theme that we have been seeing over the last few months. A little bit of a ripple in the first couple of days of 2020, but 2019 or 2020 right now taking its cues from 2019. But that earnings season coming up. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, then we'll have to check how much they actually made. Okay, thank you so much to Abigail Doolittle. And now we're going to turn next to a talk with Senator Tom Carper of Delaware. We're going to talk with him about what he thought about that secret administrative briefing yesterday on the U.S. attack on General Soleimani. That's coming up next. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio.
Revision. This is not a cat. This is not a rocket. And this is not a sale. That's right. At Smarty Mobile, we're not having a sale. While others are slashing prices, we're introducing our best ever new plans. Take our new 30-gig data SIM for just £10 a month. With unlimited calls and texts and no speed restrictions, credit checks or contract tying you down, why shop around? New plans, great value. Now that's Smarty. Grab yours today. Search Smarty Mobile. See smarty.co.uk for terms.
Imagine yourself in an unspoiled paradise.
discovering the charms of a new city, or sampling street food with the locals. Fly from London to more than 160 destinations worldwide and make 2020 a year like never before with Qatar Airways, named world's best airline by Skytrax. Our incredible selection of special fares are available now. Book today at QatarAirways.com. Qatar Airways, going places together.
Had the same job for the last 15 years? Working with the same people, in the same office, drinking tea from the same comedy mug, eating the same crayfish and rocket sandwich every lunchtime, using the same business jargon, and climbing the same greasy pole. What does that even mean? Then maybe it's time to switch it up, starting with the all-new Vauxhall Corsa. With its bold styling and up to 70 miles per gallon. To switch it up, visit your local Vauxhall dealership or search New Corsa. Official WLTP test figures for comparison purposes only. Real-world figures may vary.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards at the goal line. It's intercepted.
Listen live as the action unfolds or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught. It is in for the right side for the touchdown to Keenan.
Search NFL today.
We can't make traffic move faster during rush hour. But we can help you catch up on the news with TuneIn. With live around-the-clock news from MSNBC.
In the UK, they're significantly worse. When the president gets up to the podium...
CNBC and Fox News Talk.
The Fox News poll sizing up the race for 2020 found that each of the 5 top Democrats...
You can use your stop and go for good by staying in touch with the world. Search news to hear what's happening now.
Hello, I'm Nat Coombs from ESPN's The Nat Coombs Show, which admittedly is 1 out of 10 for original podcast name, but 10 out of 10 for NFL chat. Every week, we're dropping 4 episodes with an all-pro lineup of terrific guests, journalists, comedians, players, coaches, you name it, all getting you up to speed with everything gridiron. The Nat Coombs Show, American football, British accent. Add to your favorites and listen on TuneIn.
The NBA is on TuneIn Premium.
Pointer by Anthony Davis. That's good!
Each week, TuneIn picks an NBA game you just can't miss. 2 of the top teams in the Western Conference go head-to-head. This Sunday, the Clippers are at the Nuggets. Tip-off is at 8 p.m. Eastern.
3 ball on the way. He got it to go! 3 from the angle. Got it!
Search NBA to follow your favorite NBA team today.
Right now, instead of hearing this, you could be listening to the music that keeps you moving with TuneIn Premium. Find today's biggest songs and all of your favorites commercial-free. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
Along the goal line, scores! He takes it home!
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
Here's Pietrangelo, he scores!
Hear the action live on TuneIn Premium.
The move, and a shot, they score!
From regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium.
Upgrade today. Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards at the goal line. It's intercepted.
Listen live as the action unfolds or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught. It is in for the right side for the touchdown to Keenan.
Search NFL today.
Want to know a quick, easy way to see if your favorite podcasts have a new episode available? Just go to the home screen on your TuneIn app and see the latest editions under the Your New Episode section. Happy listening.
Want to hear about the latest and greatest things to listen to on TuneIn? For reminders of the biggest live sports games, debates, and breaking news stories, follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to stay connected with the audio that matters to you.
And in this case, it's just too soon to say. We just need to cool our jets and let us do our homework and find out what happened. regret the loss of life of the folks who are on that plane. Apparently, they're from a lot of different countries. That's very, very tragic.
Yeah, well said, Senator. Give me 1 minute on Nancy Pelosi, articles of impeachment. The Speaker of the House is not sending them over yet. We're hearing some senators, including some Democratic senators, saying it's high time you get going. People like Barbara Feinstein and things saying, let's send them over. Do you think it's time for her to send them over?
If you look at the Constitution, the framers of our Constitution came up with an impeachment process that sort of mirrors what goes on in criminal proceedings outside of Washington, D.C., outside of the Congress. And the way, as you know, the way that criminal justice works, you have an attorney general, you have a prosecutor who gathers evidence, convenes a grand jury. The grand jury indicts or they don't indict an indictment. And in the Congress, it's a very similar situation. The grand jury in this case is the House of Representatives. The impeachment indictment in the grand jury is an impeachment here. And then we have a jury trial. The idea to say that the House can gather information from witnesses, in some cases under oath, if the president will let them testify. But then when they actually have the jury trial, we can't have any new witnesses, we can't have any more information submitted. That's crazy. And I think, God bless Nancy Pelosi. She should stick to her guns until we have the ability to call relevant witnesses. Chuck Schumer's not asking for a million of them. He's asking for 4 people who have relevant information. And Jefferson used to say, if the people know the truth, we won't make a mistake. The same is true of Congress. We need to know the truth.
Senator, you are known for your positions on the environment, and President Trump, when he was talking to us from the White House, was actually talking about revisions to the National Environmental Policy Act. Give us your take on those revisions. Are they prudent? As I understand, they would make it possible to move forward more quickly with certain infrastructure projects.
I'm on the committee that works on surface transportation, roads, highways, and bridges. I'm a senior Democrat on that committee. About every 5 years, we pass major surface transportation legislation. In the last, I'd say, decade, we have passed some 60 provisions that are designed to streamline, to expedite the movement with appropriate environmental safeguards, but to make it easier to build roads, highways, and bridges. Most of those provisions that we've adopted in law have not been implemented, have not been funded, and are not being done. And before we go around changing without a lot of care, the grandfather, the bedrock environmental law, environmental protection law in our country, known as NEPA, we need to be careful.
At the same time, Senator, I saw some good news. Reports out that, in fact, greenhouse gas emissions in the United States actually declined by 2.1% last year, apparently largely because of removal of coal as a source of electricity. Are we making progress?
Yeah, there's good news, bad news here. The good news is with respect to carbon emissions from coal-fired plants. Coal-fired plants are greatly diminished. I think the emissions down coal-fired plants in the last couple of years about almost 20%. That's why the overall emission picture is down by about 2%. It's mostly all attributable to coal-fired utility plants, which are largely going away. The biggest source of carbon emissions in our planet is the vehicles we drive, our cars, trucks, vans. And what we need is a 50-state deal that ratchets back the emissions of our cars, trucks, and vans beginning in 2021 through 2025. Doesn't do it in a way that cripples the auto companies, makes them uncompetitive, but in a thoughtful, reasonable way. We can do that. Unfortunately, this administration is not interested in going there. If we're going to make serious progress, we need to make a lot more progress in the very near term as well as the longer term. So really serious progress. 2 best things we can do: continue to reduce emissions from utility plants, go after emissions from buildings, and the other thing, the big thing, is cars, trucks, and vans.
Okay, Senator, thank you so much. That's really helpful perspective. That's Senator Tom Carper. He's a Democrat from Delaware. Coming at 1 o'clock this afternoon Eastern Time, we're going to have more on Iran, with U.S. officials now saying the Iranian missiles likely downed that Ukraine International Airlines flight in Iran. Former Homeland Security Secretary Michael Chertoff will be joining us on Bloomberg Radio. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and on radio.
Message and data rate may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
To buy your home, you became a house hunting ace, learned about loans, scoured neighborhoods, and asked the right questions. Now you're queen of your castle. If you manage that, you can get your retirement plan on track. Visiting aceyourretirement.org can help. With 401k tips and smart saving strategies, you'll feel empowered to own your retirement like you own your home. Go to aceyourretirement.org. Because when it comes to clearing financial hurdles, you're an ace. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Full breakfast, cup of coffee, whatever you have in the morning, have it at daybreak.
Event risk is taking center stage for traders.
Nathan Hager.
We get a policy decision from the Federal Reserve.
And Karen Moscow.
It is the fifth major industry player to make some sort of zero commission offer.
Bloomberg Daybreak.
Bloomberg has more from Hong Kong.
Weekdays at 5 a.m. Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio. I'm David Weston. Back to that breaking news on Iran. U.S. officials now see a missile strike as the likely cause of that plane crash in Iran. Bloomberg's Kaylee Lyons joins us here now. So one of the first things we asked about is Boeing.
Right. Well, Boeing has been up all day because there was kind of already speculation that this was not necessarily the plane maker's fault. You had aviation experts saying that this crash likely wasn't just an engine fire, as things didn't really proceed in the way that is common with those types of crashes.
After it went down after the crash.
After it went down, of course, after the crash, because this just added to concerns for Boeing. The last thing Boeing needed was another plane crash on one of its jets. It is still higher by about 2% today. Interesting, though, the broader market is actually taking a bit of a leg lower on this. We're still up on the day by about 0.5% on the S&P 500, but we are well off the highs of the session as this maybe is seen as throwing a little bit in the dent in the relief rally. If this was indeed Iran shooting down this plane, maybe disrupts that all is calm narrative just a touch.
It's not always easy to have an immediate cause and effect between what happens in the world and what happens in the markets. At the same time, the notion that Iran is mistakenly shooting down civilian aircraft is not necessarily good news for the world. I mean, if you're flying, if you're transacting business, that's not necessarily good news.
Right, from a risk perspective, and I actually should check on what other airlines are doing today, because as we know, when these initial strikes in Iran were announced, those airlines really took it on the chin, because not only could they be affected by higher oil prices, which obviously isn't the case anymore, but potential retaliation targets. And that's exactly what we're seeing playing out right now. I'm taking a look at the likes of American say they are heading down toward the lows of the session. They're not negative by any means, but obviously there could be broader implications for it.
Big story. Thank you so much, Kaylee. Really appreciate it. That's Bloomberg's Kaylee Lyons. Up next, Liu He is coming back to Washington. China gives its first confirmation of the Phase 1 trade deal signing. That's coming up next week. We talk with Libby Cantrell about what we should be expecting next in our negotiations with China after the president says he's going to start negotiations on Phase 2 immediately, as he puts it. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and on Bloomberg Radio.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Apple says customers spent a record amount of money on its apps over the holidays. They dropped $1.4 billion on apps in just 1 week, the 1 week between Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve. There's a relief rally on Wall Street, putting more money in your pocket. Stocks are at a record high as tensions with Iran ease. The Dow is up 230 points, the S&P 21, the Nasdaq 80. This news is also lifting the markets. ADP says 202,000 jobs were added to the economy in December. Most of those jobs were in services. Hospital bankruptcies and closures are threatening to leave some of the country's most vulnerable citizens without care. Bloomberg reports at least 30 hospitals filed for bankruptcy in 2019. And the importer of Corona beer plans to spend the most money ever, $40 million, on promoting Corona brand hard seltzer when it goes on sale this coming spring. Constellation Brand says its research shows seltzer is taking business away from beer, wine, and spirits, mostly beer. I'm Chuck Kamlick, Bloomberg Radio.
Why has J.D. Power ranked Commonwealth Financial Network #1 in independent advisor satisfaction among financial investment firms For the sixth straight time, we think it comes down to one thing: you. Because it's your input and feedback that keeps us focused on what's most important to you and your clients, and continually pushes us to be the best we can be. Maybe that's why we receive top marks in every category of the J.D. Power 2019 Advisor Satisfaction Survey. They named us number 1 in client support, number 1 in firm leadership, number 1 in operational support, number 1 in compensation, number 1 in professional development support, and number 1 in technology support. Ready to partner with the best? Call Commonwealth at 866-462-3638 or visit commonwealth.com and feel the power. Member FINRA SIPC, a registered investment advisor. For 2019 J.D. Power award information, visit jdpower.com/awards.
Hi, everyone. Al Roker here. As a guy with his own catchphrase, I appreciate that after 75 years, Smokey's only said,
"Only you can prevent wildfires."
But I'm filling in because there's a lot more to report. Like when it's dry or windy. Be careful burning yard waste, because wildfires can even start in your neck of the woods. Go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
You can't be expected to research every industry
You do have an incredible vantage point.
or new technology
The United States is usually early adopting in terms of technologies.
or trend.
This is going to fit into the grander scheme of electric vehicles.
And really, why should you? We already do. Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Massar and Jason Kelly. Weekday afternoons at 2 on Bloomberg 1130, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
From New York, this is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio. I'm David Weston. For Bloomberg First Word News, we go now to Mark Crumpton.
David, U.S. intelligence officials increasingly believe that the Ukrainian jet that fell from the sky after taking off from Tehran on Wednesday was shot down by a missile. Bloomberg has learned the government has obtained evidence that indicates the rapid descent of the Boeing 737 was not caused by a mechanical issue or by pilot error. The Ukraine International Airlines jet plunged from the sky minutes after takeoff, killing all 176 people aboard. Witnesses say the jetliner was on fire as it fell. The negotiations for the second round of a U.S.-China trade deal will start right away, but President Trump says they might not be finished until after the 2020 election. Mr. Trump spoke at the White House during an event on environmental regulations. China confirmed that it will sign the first phase of the trade deal with the United States next week. Britain is set to pass a major milestone on the road to Brexit today. A bill authorizing the country's departure from the European Union is expected to get final approval from the House of Commons. That despite opposition from smaller parties. The withdrawal agreement bill should become law in time for the UK to leave the EU on the scheduled date of January 31st. In Australia, more residents are being urged to evacuate their homes due to the ongoing wildfires. Hot and windy conditions are expected to escalate the danger over the next 2 days. Officials say temperatures could soar to more than 110 degrees. The unprecedented fire crisis in the southeastern part of Australia has claimed at least 26 lives since September and destroyed more than 2,000 homes. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in over 120 countries. I'm Mark Crumpton. This is Bloomberg. David?
Thanks so much, Mark. Back now to the top story that Mark just mentioned. U.S. officials now see a missile strike as the likely cause of that plane crash in Iran. Bloomberg's national security reporter Bill Ferries joins us now. Bill, I suspect we have more questions than answers, but give us as many answers as we can get. Do we know anything more than what I just said? U.S. officials think it was a missile.
Not really. We did hear President Trump at a news conference just a few minutes before that story broke, saying that he had his doubts about the theory that it could have been a mechanical failure. He pointed out that he called it a very rough neighborhood. Obviously, on the night that this plane went down, for whatever reason, that was some of the most heavily watched airspace anywhere in the world, given the attack and the U.S. technology to detect it. So it it would be an enormous coincidence if on the night of a strike like that, a plane happened to go down for a mechanical failure. Again, we're still looking for more reporting on this, but that does seem to be the belief among U.S. officials.
Yeah, and this is where we get to the questions we don't have answers for. As I understand, they were surface-to-surface missiles that were fired at those two bases in Iraq. They were not surface-to-air missiles. So is it likely a surface-to-surface missile would take down an aircraft accidentally?
No, I think the thinking so far is that it would be a surface-to-air missile that, Iranian defense mechanisms that would have been turned on in case the U.S. somehow launched a response to the Iranian attack on the airbase in Iraq. So this would have been presumably a precautionary measure by the Iranians that could have misfired. Again, this is a lot of speculation here. All we know at this point is that a lot of U.S. officials think that a missile is a more likely explanation for what happened.
It's still a lot more than I knew. So thank you so much to Bloomberg. Bill Ferry's reporting now from Washington. And now let's turn from Iran to trade. We're getting more details on the U.S.-China Phase 1 trade deal signing. China announced earlier that Vice Premier Liu He will be traveling to Washington to sign that agreement next week. Meanwhile, President Trump said in the past hour the negotiations on Phase 2 of the deal will start right away. Here with more on what we can expect is Libby Cantrell, head of public policy at PIMCO. Welcome, Libby.
Thank you.
A lot going on, but let's start with Phase 1. Now it appears they are, in fact, going to sign it the way they said they would. How much do we know what's in? Maybe I'm overly obsessed with the 86 pages and not knowing what's in the 86 pages.
Well, and presumably we will get more details, most likely next week. I mean, what we do know is that, and a very big focus for the president were these agricultural purchases, these promises to make up to $40 to $50 billion of purchases from the United States. This, of course, benefits a big, important constituency for him, the farmers. I think the math's going to be hard on those. So, I think
people say that they're able to get to that level.
And I think our our commodities traders say the same thing. So that's worth watching for sure. In exchange, we're providing a little bit of relief on tariffs from 15% rate on $110 billion of goods to 7.5%. But still, David, there are tariffs will still, after this Phase 1, will still be on $360 billion of imports. I think that's an important thing from an economic perspective to remember, and from a markets perspective, that this is by no means a settlement. This is a reprieve, and I think arguably a fragile one at that.
Which raises a big question in my mind, at least, and we'll have to wait to find out the answer. The president today said he's going to start negotiating Phase 2 right away, but it may be after the election before it gets done. One question in my mind is, do we have to wait for the rest of the tariffs to be relieved until after the final deal is done, or is this something where maybe he could be ratcheting back in the meantime?
Yeah, and I think that's certainly what the Chinese want. I think the Chinese certainly are hoping that the White House will provide some more tariff relief as these negotiations continue. I'm not sure if we're optimistic about that. I think that the timing around Phase 2, just given the U.S. government officials and Chinese officials have been working on this now for around 2 years. So, I think morale is relatively low. I think they're exhausted, and I think, we're not optimistic that we see a phase deal before the election, kind of, if ever. Well, we'll see. I mean, of course, Phase 2 will presumably address the big structural sticking points that the Chinese have been very reluctant to concede on, and I'm not sure the calculus around those have changed for the Chinese.
Let's talk about the other trade deal, that USMCA. The president actually mentioned as well in his remarks today that apparently is being held up until they figure out what they're doing with impeachment in the Senate, which put pressure to some extent on the Speaker of the House. Nancy Pelosi came out today during her regular press conference, and she said she's going to send him over fairly soon. This is what she said.
No, I'm not holding him indefinitely. I'll send him over when I'm ready. And that will probably be soon. We want to see what they're willing to do and the manner in which they will do it.
So not indefinitely, fairly soon, but she wants to see what they're going to do. It's pretty clear she's not going to get to see, because Mitch McConnell says, we'll wait till we start the trial, then we'll decide.
Right, exactly. Sort of clear as mud, right? And I think that she's actually getting some pressure, not from House Democrats, but from Senate Democrats to sort of expedite this process, because, of course, as you know, 5 of the 14 remaining Democratic candidates running for the Democratic nomination are in the Senate. And they, of course, want to be in Iowa. They want to be in New Hampshire. They want to be in South Carolina campaigning. They don't want to be sitting in the Senate for
for a trial for the president, which presumably will just lead to acquittal. So I think we know kind of how this story ends at this point, and I think the Democrats want to see this through.
Let's spend a minute on those Democratic candidates, because we had a poll earlier coming out of Iowa saying there's a three-way tie. Monmouth has a poll out today that basically says a four-way tie, including Elizabeth Warren up there. In the meantime, they're raking in money like I can't believe.
Yeah, they've raised, I mean, their Q4 preliminary numbers look very good. Bernie Sanders, for anybody who's kind of counted him out after his heart attack in October, that was certainly misplaced. And the thing about this that's interesting, David, and from a kind of a policy nerd perspective, this is very exciting because this does increase the chances that we may not actually know the front runner. We may not have a front runner by the time we go in even to the convention in July. Now, they've said that before in previous election cycles, but because this is sort of a four-way tie, because these candidates are raising so much money, and because, of course, Bloomberg has indefinite resources, presumably this could last quite a while. Interestingly, by March 17th, from a market's perspective, that's what folks should be looking at. March 17th, 70% of the pledged delegates will be allocated. So if we don't have a clear frontrunner by then again, the chances of brokered convention in July increase significantly.
As far as you can tell, does this make it particularly difficult for the former Vice President, Joe Biden, because his plan was basically get out in front, stay out in front, just be the prohibitive favorite, and it looks like that might not happen now.
Well, look, I mean, to Vice President Biden's credit, I mean, his polling's been a lot more durable than I think a lot of people thought, especially after, maybe some lackluster appearances and performances in the debate. So, sure, is this sort of a Gintz plan? But again, I mean, I think you have to look at his polling. He's been the lead front runner. He's been the front runner, pretty consistently, and that doesn't look like it's changing anytime soon.
Libby, it's always great to have you here. Thank you so much. That's Libby Cantrell. She's head of public policy at PIMCO. And a disclaimer, Michael R. Bloomberg is the founder and majority owner of Bloomberg LP. That's the parent company of Bloomberg News. Coming up, the world is breathing a sigh of relief after the United States and Iran have apparently stepped back from their confrontation. But will it last? And is there a way forward? We talk with Iran expert Hilary Mann Leverett of Stratega. That's next. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and on radio.
At TUI, we're spreading sunshine early by giving away hundreds of thousands of free kids' places. So you can holiday with the little ones for less. Book today and spread the cost with £0 deposit when you pay with direct debit. From splash parks to swimming lessons. At TUI, we cross the T's, dot the I's, and put you in the middle. Direct debit on web bookings only. Free kids' places subject to limited availability. One free child place per 2 full paying adults. Booking T's and C's apply. At all protected.
Do you do the same thing every weekend? Meet up with the same friends for brunch, browse around the same shops, eat the same Saturday night takeaway. Mine's a lamb balti with mushroom pilau rice. Snuggle up next to the same person and watch the same brain-numbing reality TV. Then maybe it's time to switch it up. Starting with the all-new Vauxhall Corsa, with its bold styling and up to 70 miles per gallon. To switch it up, visit your local Vauxhall dealership or search New Corsa. Official WLTP test figures for comparison purposes only. Real-world figures may vary.
You don't just live in one room, so why should your Wi-Fi? With Sky Broadband's Wi-Fi guarantee, you'll get Wi-Fi in every room or money back. Perfect for food shopping in the bedroom, gaming in your PJs in the lounge, or streaming sci-fi movies in the kitchen. Get Sky's super-fast broadband and Wi-Fi guarantee. £32 a month for 18 months with $19.95 setup. Click on the banner now.
Sky Fibre errors, Sky Kit required. Refund on boost component of subscription paid during current minimum term up to date of claim. Minimum 3 megabits per second or money back. Prices may change during minimum term. See sky.com/guarantee.
Pascal gobbles up the rebound and slammed it down. Catch your favorite NBA team right here on TuneIn.
A step back deep three is up and in.
Search NBA on TuneIn and hear all the action. The NBA lives on TuneIn.
Want to hear about the latest and greatest things to listen to on TuneIn? For reminders of the biggest live sports games, debates, and breaking news stories, follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to stay connected with the audio that matters to you.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Did you know your favorite radio stations are in your pocket? Yes, the TuneIn app lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio anywhere you want. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie.
With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards at the goal line. It's intercepted.
Listen live as the action unfolds or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught. It is in for the right side for the touchdown.
Search NFL today.
Start hearing more of what you want. Upgrade to TuneIn Premium and get over 45 commercial-free music stations, live commercial-free news, and every live NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL game. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards at the goal line. It's intercepted.
Listen live as the action unfolds or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught. It is in for the right side for the touchdown.
Search NFL today.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn. We can't make traffic move faster during rush hour, but we can help you catch up on the news with TuneIn. With live around-the-clock news from MSNBC.
In the UK, they're significantly worse. When the president gets up to the podium...
CNBC and Fox News Talk.
The Fox News poll sizing up the race for 2020 found that each of the 5 top Democrats...
You can use your stop and go for good by staying in touch with the world. Search news to hear what's happening now.
Citizens on that plane, they may have something to say about who's going to look at this.
Well, they certainly will want to have something to say about it, but this is where the Iranians get very defensive. They want to have control over decisions taken in and about their own territory. So I think they will first and foremost try to reach out to those that are going to be seen as more aligned with Iranian interests, in particularly the Russians, who have a lot of experience in this area.
So yesterday, Doctor, we heard President Trump say that he believes that Iran is standing down, I think was the term he used in the confrontation in the United States. Do you read it the same way? And if so, how did they do that?
I don't read it the same way. I think it's a bit of wishful thinking, and I think for right now, President Trump has gotten lucky, and he should enjoy this time. I've negotiated with the Iranians since 9/11, and I came to know the current Iranian Foreign Minister, Mohammad Javad Zarif, well during that negotiation, and really for the past nearly 20 years in various what we call track 2 diplomatic efforts to resolve differences between the U.S. and Iran. This is the most acrimonious time that I have seen in more than 20 years. Even someone like Foreign Minister Zarif, who has always looked for a diplomatic path forward, who has always looked to negotiate, he is not looking to do that now. He thinks the possibility of real negotiations with the United States has all but collapsed. I think we're in for the next at least 6 months, if not year up until the election campaign here in the United States, of really a slow boil of tension between the U.S. and Iran that could explode in some unpredictable ways.
To put it bluntly, can Iran afford that? What's going on with their economy with the sanctions in place?
Well, in part because of that, they can't afford the status quo. I think that's what many people don't understand. The sanctions have been crippling. They are debilitating inside Iran. And for some time, since May 2018, when Trump pulled the United States out of the Iran nuclear deal and started to reimpose sanctions, Iranians across the political board there have coalesced around the idea that the status quo is not sustainable. So we've seen an increased range of provocations from Iran. This was not the first one that culminated with the killing of General Soleimani. The Iranians were likely behind the September 14th attacks on the Saudi overland oil infrastructure in Saudi Arabia. The Iranians were responsible for shooting down the American drone at the end of June. So it has been seen as unsustainable, and I think the Iranians are going to continue to try to push until they achieve their goal, which is the expulsion of U.S. troops from the region and perhaps even bringing down President Trump, as they think they brought down President Carter back in 1980.
So that's bringing down President Trump. What about bringing down the regime over in Iran? Before all of this happened, the attack on Soleimani, there were demonstrations in Iran. There were reports that hundreds, maybe even thousands were killed as a result. How solid is the Ayatollah Khamenei?
Well, in part, what this killing of Soleimani has done is it has brought about a tremendous political consolidation inside Iran and within the region for Iran. There were not only divisions within Iran, but there were divisions in Iraq. There was anti-Iran sentiment really exploding into the headlines in Iraq. But today, it's really consolidated. There is a rally around the flag effect that we have seen with millions of people turning out in Iran to commemorate the death or to mourn the death of General Soleimani, and in Iraq as well to mourn the death not only of Iran's General Soleimani, but of the Iraqi fighters that were killed in that same hit. So we're seeing this political consolidation really backfire, perhaps, in terms of what President Trump wanted, with more support for the government in Iran and for Iran inside Iraq as well.
Hillary Mann Leverett, Stratega CEO, will be staying with us. President Trump said today he still wants to have negotiations. We're going to talk with Dr. Mann about whether that's really possible. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and on radio.
Financial leaders enjoy talking with Tom Keene and Jonathan Farrow.
What was it like having the giant darken the door every once in a while?
Experts appreciate it when what they have to say is understood.
Do you think that we might have seen a cyclical peak in the labour market?
It's the same reason we're recommending Bloomberg Surveillance to you.
Everything you thought would happen is happening.
Weekday mornings at 7 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma.
At age 30, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, you can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Vatsal Shah is Senior Project Engineer at Mott MacDonald, a global engineering consultancy with more than 16,000 employees. He earned his PhD at New Jersey Institute of Technology, and as an adjunct professor, is helping NJIT students explore emerging technologies.
My focus is renewable markets, emerging technologies, the idea of floating cities. What are we doing to develop that? What will happen to the city on the water? Well, you're going to have waves hitting it. You're going to have solar. How are you going to develop plants? How are you going to develop vegetation and farming? That sort of thought process happens at NJIT. We actually plan out what will the city look like. How do we develop that? So in 10 years, we're actually ready to take on those challenges when we have our first development in the water. NJIT also has been doing a lot of work in self-healing materials, so taking the polymers and the new material that we have in our material sciences departments and putting them into things like concrete, things like steel, reinforcing our soil.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio. I'm David Weston. We are back now with Hillary Mann Leverett of Stratega, the CEO there. So one of the things we heard from President Trump yesterday and then again today was he would like a diplomatic, a negotiated settlement to all of this with Iran. Is there any prospect of that? Can you see any path that we can get there?
I think it would be very difficult. The Iranians now don't trust the words of President Trump or the U.S. government. It's not even so much the killing of General Soleimani. It was Trump's abrogation of the Iran nuclear deal negotiated by President Obama. If Trump could not uphold a prior agreement of the U.S. government, why should Iran trust President Trump? The only way I potentially see forward is if there was some action, not just words, but some action. And the two areas that the Iranians are looking for are the lifting of U.S. sanctions, and the second is the removal of U.S. troops from the region. Now, while both of those seem very far off, there are potentially two doors that could open slightly in each area. One is over the crash of this Ukrainian airliner. If the United States were to lift sanctions, at least enough to allow Boeing to go in to work with Iran to deal with this crash and perhaps even to expand that relationship a bit, that's possibly a small door that could go forward. The other also seems a bit unlikely, but is been opened by President Trump, is the removal of U.S. troops. President Trump has long wanted to remove U.S. troops from the Middle East. He campaigned on this in 2016, and it looked like that was going to be a major talking point in his campaign this year. What he's saying today is that he would rather NATO troops be in the Middle East rather than U.S. troops. Now, Iran is not so interested in NATO troops, but if they could get the president to move from the idea of removing U.S. troops and replacing them with NATO troops to just removing U.S. troops, at least there's a path there. Now, while both of those seem unlikely and seem a bit odd, I've dealt with the Iranians for nearly 20 years and their foreign minister. He has a PhD in international law from an American university. He understands the American dynamic, the politics, the rhetoric, the vernacular here, and perhaps he can see a way to work with that.
We're talking with
It's
Hillary.
a bit of wishful thinking, but that's the only path I see.
Sorry, Doctor. We're talking with Hillary Mann Leverett of Stratega. One of the possibilities that President Trump held out yesterday was, I'll call it JCPOA 2.0. That in fact we need the UK, Germany, maybe Russia, maybe even China to join with us to get Iran back to the negotiating table in order to have a new approach that would cover some of the things he's concerned about, and maybe we could get a relief of sanctions that way. We talked with Michael O'Hanlon from Brookings Institution yesterday. This is what he said about that idea.
Well, there is a prospect in theory, but I'm not sure the Trump administration can really be the one to do it because, first of all, of course, they've lost credibility as sort of multilateral player on this issue.
So, Doctor, what about it? Maybe not the United States taking the lead, but could we get Germany, for example, or the UK to take the lead here and actually get a bigger deal done with JCPOA that would satisfy both the regime in Iran, because we'd get a reduction of sanctions or elimination, and President Trump, because we'd address things like missiles?
Well, the Europeans would love to do this. But from what I understand, even though President Trump put this out there's not a lot of reality underneath it and holding it up. Because what President Trump is really looking for, and this is important because it's not without some legitimacy, what he is looking for is a bilateral deal between the United States and Iran that allows U.S. business to benefit from any deal with Iran. One of the major problems he had with the JCPOA, when you take off all the vitriolic rhetoric around his complaints about it, his core concern was it did nothing for the United States, nothing for U.S. companies. It allowed the Europeans, the Japanese to all go in and make lots of deals, but not a thing for U.S. companies. So my understanding is that he continues to be very focused on the potential for a U.S.-Iran deal. I'm not sure he's going to get it this way.
And finally, Doctor, you mentioned more than once the possibility that Iran would want to somehow dislodge President Trump, maybe in the election year coming up. Yes. Do they have the capability to do things, including on U.S. soil, that could really interfere with the election here?
Well, there are a few tracks that Iran proceeds on at the same time. One is direct military, what they would call direct military retaliation, which they've done. They've shown their capacity to do that with their missile strikes on these bases in Iraq that house U.S. troops. But where Iran has really excelled for 40 years is in asymmetric warfare. And it's not necessarily the military part of asymmetric warfare. There's the psychological aspect. The way they dislodged Carter was they forced President Carter back in 1980 to misstep during the hostage crisis. They see their capacity there as well. That President Trump, they think they can force him to misstep. They can. One of them said to me, they can put him in the slow boil of incompetence and have him come down in November.
Okay, Doctor, thank you so very much. It was really terrific having you with us. That's Hillary Mann Leverett, Stratega CEO. Coming up at 1 o'clock this afternoon Eastern Time, we're going to have more on Iran with Michael Chertoff, former U.S. Homeland Security Secretary. Coming up tomorrow, I'm going to be hosting a new program for Bloomberg Television, radio, and digital. Bloomberg Wall Street Week will bring back an icon of business television, originally hosted by Louis Rockheiser. We'll bring you the most important stories of the week, stories that affect Wall Street and the world, with a regular panel of thought leaders. This week, it will be Larry Summers, former Secretary of Treasury, and Roger Ferguson, CEO of TIAA, talking about the events of the week. Our panel will be joined by Michelle Flournoy. She's former Undersecretary of Defense for policy on the U.S. confrontation with Iran. That's going to come up at 6 p.m. Eastern Time tomorrow on Bloomberg Television and Radio. This is Bloomberg.
This is the Bloomberg Pursuits look at luxury. At the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas, Mercedes-Benz unveiled a cyborg concept car inspired by the Hollywood blockbuster Avatar. The Mercedes-Benz AVTR is an electric-powered car that features a fully recyclable battery, lateral crab-like movement, and no steering wheel. Instead, a biometric control function allows, quote, human and machine to merge as the car monitors the driver's breathing patterns. It's unclear whether the new Mercedes concept will make an appearance in the long-awaited Avatar sequel, which has been pushed back to December of 2021. And that delay is one reason movie theaters are facing a rough outlook for this year, as 2020 slate of films is lacking mega hits. Only No Time to Die, the latest entry in the James Bond franchise, and Wonder Woman 1984 may match the power of films in 2019 when 4 titles made more than $400 million each. I'm Andrew O'Day, Bloomberg Radio.
When you put together the puzzle that's today's business and political environment,
Can you make a call given this swirl of data?
Is that already being reflected in the way that they're priced?
make sure you have all the pieces.
Which segments of Alphabet's business are most likely to come under scrutiny?
They're getting mixed signals from governments.
He's failed to gain traction.
Will he have to abide by a subpoena?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
You know your body, and you know when something's off, when something doesn't feel quite right. Don't ignore symptoms like fatigue, joint pain, rashes, and fever. They could be signs of lupus. Listen to your body. Take care of yourself. We're here to help you take control of your health. Learn how at BeFierceTakeControl.org. Brought to you by the Lupus Foundation of America and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Rich is just a really good guy. The term good egg isn't enough to describe him. He's also certified organic and free range. Rich puts the cap back on everything. The toothpaste, the olive oil, the shampoo, everything. He lets his 10-year-old nephew beat him at virtual tennis, even though he can straight up slay his 10-year-old nephew in virtual tennis. When the toilet paper is running low, Rich replaces the roll on the actual holder, not just on the back of the toilet. Rich is texting and driving. Rich? No. What are you doing, Rich? I was just telling everyone how great you are. Texting and driving makes good people look bad. Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pelleton. Another day of records with the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all advancing right now. Stocks are rising. Treasuries are falling as investor appetite for risk returns after America and Iran step back from the brink of war. S&P 500 index on track for another record. S&P up 15 now. That's a gain of 0.5%. S&P now at 32.69. NASDAQ also higher, up 52 points, up 0.6%. Indeed, on track for a record there. The Dow up 180 points, up now by 0.6%. 10-year down 132nd, the yield 1.877%. As for the market backdrop, Jim Glassman is senior economist at J.P. Morgan.
I look at the multiples in the stock market. They're not crazy like they were in the 1990s, and yet the value of the market relative to the U.S. economy is so much bigger. So that's telling you it's not really about bubble phenomenon. It's really more about something transforming going on in the U.S. economy and the global economy.
Bed Bath & Beyond plunging to its lowest level in more than a month after the home goods retailer pulled its year forecast after third quarter results missed estimates. Bed Bath & Beyond down 19.2%. Kohl's, J.C. Penney, and L Brands are the latest mall-based retailers to report declining holiday sales. Kohl's down 9.4% today. J.C. Penney down 11.6%. J.C. Penney, by the way, now at $1.06 a share. Limited Brands up by 0.8%. Gold is down 0.4%, $15.49 the ounce, and crude oil a pullback there. West Texas Intermediate down 0.2%, $59.48 a barrel. Brent 65.44. 102 on Wall Street. Time now for the Market Drivers Report with a focus on American depository receipts. And here is Dave Wilson.
Thanks, Charlie. ADRs are lower, unlike U.S. shares. The S&P ADR index is down 0.1%, and the S&P 500's up 0.5%. UK ADRs are mostly lower in U.S. trading after Prime Minister Boris Johnson's Brexit bill cleared its final hurdle in the House of Commons. Lloyd's Banking Group has dropped 2.4%. Textbook publisher Pearson is also down 2.4%. And advertising company WPP has fallen 1.4%. And UK retailer Marks & Spencer has lost 11.5%. Fiscal third quarter sales of clothing and home furnishings declined 1.7%, which caused total revenue to drop. Marks & Spencer said its full-year gross profit margin will be around the lower end of its forecast. Germany's Morphosys has risen 5.5%. ADRs of the drug developer set a record after Commerzbank raised its rating on the underlying shares to buy from hold. And France's DBV Technologies has gained more than 11%. The drug developer's proposed patch for peanut allergies had favorable results in a 3-year study. The data led Stifel to upgrade DBV to buy from hold, Charlie.
And we thank you very much, Dave Wilson, following those American depository receipts. Again, recapping the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all pushing higher, on track for records. S&P up 15, a gain of 0.5%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
This is Balance of Power.
We have the strongest economy by far in the world.
We're going to grow our trade relationship.
I know what's broken. I know how to fix it.
Where the world of politics meets the world of business.
They've got the money they need to run a very competitive race.
We've got now a real crunch few days for Brexit.
We want certainty in the markets. We want certainty in our trading relationships.
The administration is trying to create a new divided world.
Balance of Power with David Weston on Bloomberg Radio.
Liu He is coming to Washington to sign that Phase 1 trade deal. Congress challenges President Trump's power to wage war, and Iran says it's standing down. But when will we know for certain? From the Bloomberg Interactive Brokerage Studio, welcome to the second hour of Balance of Power. The world and markets breathed a sigh of relief yesterday after Iran signaled it had done what it needed to do, and President Trump similarly signaled de-escalation of the conflict. But what are Iran's capabilities to attack the U.S. in the future, and when will we know whether it will use them? Welcome now Michael Chertoff, co-founder and executive chairman of the Chertoff Group. Mr. Chertoff served as Secretary of Homeland Security under President George W. Bush and is the author of Exploding Data, Reclaiming Our Cybersecurity in the Digital Age. So, Michael, thank you so much for joining us. Let me start with this piece of news that came up. Maybe you saw it, that U.S. officials now are saying they think that it was a missile, actually, that took down that civilian airliner, the Ukrainian civilian airliner in Tehran the other night. If that is true, we don't know it's true, but if that's borne out, what does that do to the risk profile right now in the region? Does that make us feel less secure or more secure if, in fact, it was an accident by the Iranians?
Well, it certainly doesn't make us feel more secure. It's difficult to understand what would be the motive for a deliberate attack on a Ukrainian airliner carrying Iranians to Canada. And that raises the issue of either a mistake in the sense that something was launched in error or that the launch itself was in error. But I think it's too soon to tell. It doesn't fit within any obvious strategy, but of course more facts may emerge. So I think one cautionary note is for any air traffic that is not only landing in Tehran, but is even transiting Iran, I think there may want to be some serious consideration to rerouting and avoiding that airspace.
So take a step back here for a moment. As I said, we had the foreign minister Zarif basically indicate we've done what we need to do. President Trump saying he believes that Iran is standing down, as it were, when he spoke yesterday at the White House. The markets are breathing a sigh of relief. Are we a little early on that?
Well, I think what they've signaled is that the idea of an overt conflict between Iran and the U.S. for the time being has been put on pause and things have quieted down. But I would imagine and expect that the Iranians will revert to their normal way of pursuing conflict with us, which is to do it through proxies or surrogates. And so I'd anticipate that the militias, for example, in the region will continue to operate. They may target facilities or locations where there are Americans present. But for the time being, I think there'll be an effort not to take it up to the next step. Now, the one exception to that is cyberspace, because over the last several years, we've continued to see the Iranians attack in the U.S. in cyberspace. They've attacked banks. They've attacked critical infrastructure. They've probed. They've conducted reconnaissance. And so that would be an area where I would expect and prepare for continued Iranian activity in cyberspace.
I specifically wanted to ask you about that because you're an expert in that. You wrote the book about cyber. Do we have a good sense of their capability? How substantial is it? How does it compare with others, such as the Russians or the North Koreans?
I don't think the Iranians are at the level of Russia or China, but I think they're reasonably close. Remember, first of all, it's possible to buy or otherwise obtain a lot of malware technology, even if you don't generate it yourself. Also, the Russians have been cooperating with Iranians, particularly in the last couple of years, and that certainly raises the possibility that some of the techniques and technologies have made their way over. So I would treat them as maybe not the very most formidable opponent, but as a tier one adversary when it comes to cyberspace.
You do this for a living. Are your clients coming to you right now? Are they ramping up what was already probably a pretty high level of concern about cyber attacks?
Yes, and we've put out a bulletin to our clients laying out some of the things they might be particularly attentive to in terms of techniques that we've seen in the past and that we could envision being used again, against critical infrastructure, against financial institutions, transportation, or other kinds of similar functions.
As a practical matter, what can you do? I mean, you and I have talked about this in the past, but if I'm a CEO and I'm concerned about this, at this point, what can I do that I haven't already done?
Again, I would take a look at what are my key assets, what are the things that are most valuable to me, and how do I make sure those are well protected, and also that there are additional layers of access controls between maybe our general network and those elements as well. One thing we've seen recently is an increase in ransomware, where basically an attack on the network encrypts all of the data and makes it unusable, and we've seen that in a number of cities. One of the key ways to mitigate the damage is to back up your critical information and make sure you've got it in a non-internet connected location. So if you have to reconfigure or reconstitute your data, you can do that. Maersk got hit by NotPetya a couple of years ago very hard, and that actually cost them hundreds of millions of dollars because their ability to operate was compromised. So to me, backing up critical data is something that is got to be top of mind in this environment.
And finally, I want to draw upon another area of expertise. It's easy to forget the fact that before you became a global head of security, particularly as Secretary of Department of Homeland Security, you were a distinguished prosecutor and judge on the Third Circuit Court of Appeals. You know the law and you know the Constitution. What do you make of the dispute going on right now over the War Powers Resolution and the tiff between Congress and the President?
Well, I would say that this latest round of conflict did not begin with the strike against Soleimani. It actually began when the Iranians, or their proxies, struck against a base in Iraq and killed an American contractor and wounded a number of servicemen. So the first blow in this latest round of armed conflict was actually launched against us. In that circumstance, I think the president has legal authority to strike back against the military group that first struck the first blow, and I think Soleimani, counts as in that category. That being said, I think if we're going to continue to the next level, you would expect to have Congress brought into it, and I think that's something that ought to be pursued because there's no guarantee that we're not going to be back at this again.
Yeah, wise advice. Thank you so much. Really appreciate your joining us. That's Michael Chertoff of the Chertoff Group. Coming up, another social media company announces its plans for dealing with political advertising. We're going to talk with Dipayan Josh of Harvard about exactly what Facebook is up to. That's coming up next on Balance of Power on Bloomberg Radio.
You're not supposed to begin the race before the starting gun, but this is a different kind of race.
Let's go live to London and get the very latest.
Karen Moscow.
Airlines could soon be under pressure.
Nathan Hager.
Apple has reversed course on Hong Kong.
Business news, interviews, and analysis first.
We get another key reading on inflation.
Bloomberg Daybreak, weekdays at 5 a.m. Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. The possibility of lung cancer can be pretty scary, especially if you're one of approximately 8 million current or former smokers at high risk. That's why SaveByTheScan.org wants you to know that now there's a breakthrough low-dose CT scan that can detect lung cancer early, and it only takes 60 seconds. You stop smoking, now start screening. For an easy quiz to see if you're eligible, visit SaveByTheScan.org. It could save your life. SaveByTheScan.org is brought to you by the American Lung Association's Lung Force Initiative and the Ad Council. The Bloomberg Business of Sports podcast. How did the Yankees become this mega valuable team? Where the money is flowing inside sports around the globe.
From the marketing perspective, where are the dollars spent?
From union heads to team owners, Scott Soshnick and Michael Barr speak to the names that power this multi-billion-dollar industry.
Boston Red Sox CEO Sam Kennedy.
National Hockey League Commissioner Gary Bettman.
Bloomberg Business of Sports. Listen today on Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, or subscribe on Apple Podcasts.
Right now, Doctors Without Borders medical teams are operating in some of the most remote and dangerous corners of the world. When front yards become front lines, at the crossroads of conflict and epidemic, where there are no hospitals, that's where we operate. Your response is critical to our response in places where few others will go. That's where we operate. Learn more at doctorswithoutborders.org.
Sometimes in business, you have to take risks, but trading across borders and currencies shouldn't be one of them. With Western Union Business Solutions, we can help you manage the risk of doing business internationally. Our valuable experience, expert knowledge, and extensive global network makes us the ideal trusted partner for your business. And with our customer-focused support team, you'll receive a dedicated solution and personalized service. Visit westernunionbusiness.com. Western Union Business Solutions, a global financial network you can trust.
Imagine yourself in an unspoiled paradise, discovering the charms of a new city, or sampling street food with the locals. Fly from London to more than 160 destinations worldwide and make 2020 a year like never before with Qatar Airways, named world's best airline by Skytrax. Our incredible selection of special fares are available now. Book today at QatarAirways.com. Qatar Airways, going places together.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Ah, finally another commercial, said no one ever. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade now and get over 45 commercial-free music stations.
We can't make traffic move faster during rush hour, but we can help you catch up on the news with TuneIn. With live around-the-clock news from MSNBC.
In the UK, they're significantly worse. When the president gets up to the podium...
CNBC and Fox News Talk.
The Fox News poll sizing up the race for 2020 found that each of the 5 top Democrats...
You can use your stop and go for good by staying in touch with the world. Search news to hear what's happening now.
Down the middle of the 10, got to the 5, tumbles in, touchdown!
TuneIn has your NFL playoffs live all weekend. So when you're running to the store or stuck in traffic, TuneIn has you covered.
Touchdown! Puts his head down, crashes and spins and dives. Touchdown!
Search NFL and get prepared for the action.
Touchdown!
The NBA is on TuneIn Premium.
Pointer by Anthony Davis. That's good!
Each week, TuneIn picks an NBA game you just can't miss. 2 of the top teams in the Western Conference go head-to-head. This Sunday, the Clippers are at the Nuggets. Tip-off is at 8 p.m. Eastern.
3 ball on the way. He got it to go!
3 from the angle. Got it! Search NBA to follow your favorite NBA team today.
headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. The Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ are all advancing. S&P heading for another record as the conflict between the U.S. and Iran has not escalated. Technology leading the events. Right now, we've got NASDAQ up 58 points, a gain there of 0.6%. S&P's up 16 at 3269, up 0.5%. The Dow up 179 points, up 0.6%. 10-year up 3/30 seconds, yield 1.86%. We've got gold down 0.2 at $15.52 the ounce, and West Texas Intermediate crude oil down 0.3%, $59.42 a barrel. Brent crude down 0.1%, $65.39. Again, recapping, stocks moving higher again with the S&P up 16, a gain there of 0.5%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Thanks so much, Charlie Pellet. From the Interactive Broker Studio, this is Balance of Power. Political advertising on social media will be one of the big stories in this election year. Facebook has now announced its approach, which differs from that of both Twitter and of Google. Welcome now Dipayan Joshi. He is director of the Platform Accountability Project at Harvard. Earlier in his career, Mr. Joshi was a technology and economic policy advisor to President Obama and also a privacy advisor to Facebook. So welcome. It's great to have you with us. I'm sure you've looked at this Facebook announcement. Why are they being so reluctant to really take bold action? Because this doesn't feel bold to me, at least.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely not bold, and I think the reasons for this are pretty clear. First of all, Facebook anticipates that it's going to gain a lot of revenue out of political advertising through the course of the 2020 election, and it could be upwards of $1 billion, $1.5 billion, and that's not revenue that they're going to want to leave on the table. Second, I think Facebook would anticipate, if they were to do anything around curbing the potential for micro-targeting of ads, or more generally blocking political ads like Twitter has done, it would immediately draw a backlash from certainly from President Trump's camp, as well as potentially a broader set of conservatives in the United States. And that's something that they certainly want to try to avoid.
It's interesting that Twitter and Google don't seem to be concerned about that, right? Twitter just said, we're not taking any political advertising at all. As I understand, Google said, we won't take political advertising that is targeted. And Facebook says, oh, no, we'll still take that. You can opt out of targeting if you want, but you have to opt out of it.
Yeah, and as we know, users don't really utilize these kinds of options very often. They may not know about them. They may not know how to find them, and even if they do, they may not care and still be subject to kind of the harms that can arise out of this kind of micro-targeting. So I think the company knows that very well.
You've spent a fair amount of time in Washington. To what extent is a Facebook confident that politicians, lawmakers, will not regulate in this area because they want to take advantage of exactly this kind of targeting themselves? You said specifically President Trump, but it's not necessarily limited to President Trump. If you're a congressman, you're a senator, you might want it as well.
It's certainly not limited to President Trump. And in fact, I think Democrats have come out and said, look, we want micro-targeting options as well, because that's how they reach out to their constituents and raise funds. I think that's a huge part of this. There are kind of two conversations happening at two levels. One is involves politicians and their campaigns wanting to be able to micro-target so that they can raise funds and reach their constituents. There's another that's kind of more progressive set of sentiments led by people like Senator Mark Warner, Senator Amy Klobuchar, Senator John McCain when he was still in office, around wanting more transparency and more progressive change out of this industry in the interest of protecting democracy. And it's a challenge that we're going to see play out in many different ways. I do anticipate some kinds of policy changes coming in the way forward, but it remains to be seen what happens.
According to the accounts I've read of the Facebook policy, it's not just micro-targeting that's involved, but also the making of false claims in paid political posts, which they've declined to exclude. Is that accurate, and why is that? Why wouldn't they take responsibility for that? You can't do that. If you're a television station, you can't say, we'll just put up any false claim.
That's right. Facebook has made this suggestion, and this goes back to Mark Zuckerberg's speech at Georgetown University late 2019, where he said, "We're a platform that favors free speech." But of course, he didn't really mean that he's committed to free speech, but rather that again he wants to entertain the political discussion on Facebook, because it allows Facebook to be the host of all that engagement. It contributes to the company's business model. And to limit the political conversation on Facebook means to limit Facebook's impact on society and its potential for revenue and profit. And so I think this is why we're seeing these kinds of statements out of Facebook. It's a commercially convenient position for the CEO to take, to allow politicians to lie, to allow really as much as is within reason to happen on Facebook, because the moment you start to curb anything that can happen on Facebook, you potentially go down a slippery slope, inviting potentially regulation, not just in the United States, but around the world. And
Sorry, one more, and the answer may be revenue and profit once again, but that's so-called deep fakes. These are videos that are modified, and basically, as I understand it, Facebook said, we will ban deep fakes that really you can't tell, but we won't modified videos, and that's a pretty fine line.
Yeah, I think in this case, the deepfake situation is an interesting one. Up until now, deepfakes have not really had a huge impact on whether you look at it as the revenue and the engagement on Facebook, or more specifically in encouraging disinformation and falsehood. That's to say, deepfakes have just had a small impact to this date, and I think that's kind of what Facebook anticipates. And so it's also a convenient position to take to really come out and say in clear terms, we're going to block all deepfakes because they have such small impact on the bottom line and make the company look good.
There you go. Okay. Many thanks to Harvard's Defiant Josh. Really good to have you with us. Congress this afternoon takes up a bill that would curtail President Trump's power to conduct further military action against Iran without congressional involvement. We talk with Ona Hathaway. She's Yale Professor of International Law. Going to be coming up next on Balance of Power, and we are on Bloomberg Radio.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. ADP says 202,000 new jobs were added last month. The number of new claims for jobless benefits fell again last week. Thanks to that news, the Bloomberg Index of Consumer Comfort rose to the highest level since year 2000. Wall Street's putting more investment money in your pocket today. Stocks are rising again because of easing tensions with Iran. The Dow, the NASDAQ, and the S&P are all up about 0.5% today. Verizon's trying to get fewer people to cut the cord. It will now let Internet and Fios customers pick and choose their packages and their Internet speeds without a contract. Get ready to see more of the Avon lady on social media. The Brazilian company that now owns Avon as of last week tells the Wall Street Journal it wants to turn many of its 5 million sales reps into online influencers. And Facebook will give its users and Instagram users the option of limiting the number of political ads they see, but won't change its political policy, which allows those ads to say whatever they want, even if it's not true. I'm Chuck Kamlick, Bloomberg Radio.
Okay, kids, Dad's gonna teach you how to dance. First, spread your feet apart. Then, pump your knee, nod your head, shake your hips, and bite your lip ever so slightly. Now, with one hand in the air, point at people with the other hand. I call the rock star.
Dance like a dad. It's a great way to make a moment with your kids.
Now, make a face like it just smells something bad.
Visit fatherhood.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
What if you could keep the top economic experts in a conference room next to your office without having to feed them?
Do we need better optics? Do we need some substance? Do CEOs care about ESG?
We have seen quite a lot of stimulus pumped into the system already.
It's the biggest warning yet about the financial risks of climate change.
Now there are more ways to hear us. Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com and iHeartRadio apps, and at BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Take the helm and ignite your spirit of adventure with a Sunsail holiday. Relax on a skippered yacht from sunny St. Lucia to the nutmeg-scented shores of Grenada. Or take charge with a bareboat charter along Dubrovnik's glittering coastline. With up to 20% off selected destinations, now is the time to book your Sunsail adventure. Sunsail. See the world differently.
Welcome to Nuffield Health Battersea, a gym built around you. You get regular health MOTs to create a plan that works for you, with physios and personal trainers on site. You'll find a wide range of equipment and classes, and our expert team will support you to get the most out of your health, fitness, and your membership. Join today to get the rest of the month free. Search Nuffield Health. Specialists in 12-month commitments only. Facilities stated are in most gyms. Visit nuffieldhealth.com/terms.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. Banking jobs, building jobs, extra hour in bed jobs, Waterloo jobs, Canary Wharf jobs. New year, new you, new job, jobs. First jobs, flexible jobs, pay off the Christmas debt jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, small jobs, big jobs, work from home and your PJs jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
At the Bank of Santander, they've created Stan, a smart bot that can predict the future of remortgaging.
I read Stan. Will my mortgage rate go up?
1955 was the last time Newcastle won the cup.
No, and try not to mumble.
Playing, let's get ready to rumble.
Meanwhile, at Santander, they can't predict your future, but they'll help secure it with great mortgage rates fixed for up to 10 years. See what's possible at Santander.
Early repayment charges apply. Lending subject to status and criteria. Your home may be repossessed if you do not keep up repayments on your mortgage.
This is not a cat. This is not a rocket. And this is not a sale. That's right. At Smarty Mobile, we're not having a sale. While others are slashing prices, we're introducing our best ever new plans. Take our new 30 gig data SIM for just £10 a month. With unlimited calls and texts and no speed restrictions, credit checks or contract tying you down, why shop around? New plans, great value. Now that's Smarty. Grab yours today. Search Smarty Mobile. See smarty.co.uk for terms.
How can it be fair that millions of people in the world are denied access to clean water? At WaterAid, we need your help to create an equal world. Whether you're from Morden or Madagascar, everyone, everywhere should have access to clean water. Because clean water changes lives. You can help WaterAid change the picture. To find out how, search WaterAid Radio now.
I've always loved a kitchen experiment, especially smoothies. I've blended all sorts of mad combinations. Strawberry and charcoal, broccoli and chocolate. Not my best, that. But when I test blenders in the Witch Lab, it's not about flavour, it's about performance. Our tests use proper tough stuff, hard ice, strong veg, rough nuts. And the blenders that can hack it are the only ones we recommend for your kitchen.
Which tests harder so you can buy smarter. Visit which.co.uk.
This ain't just lunch. It's the KFC fill-up lunch for $1.99. It's mighty fine. Tingles your spine, so jump in line because it's time to dine on a mini fillet burger, 2 hot wings and fries, all for a fist-pumping $1.99. What the KFC fill-up lunch every day until 3 p.m. At participating restaurants every day from 2nd to 26th of January until 3 p.m. only, subject to availability.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 1061 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Balance of Power with David Weston.
Coming up on Balance of Power, how can the President and Congress play the roles they're supposed to play in conducting military operations such as that in Iraq? My colleague June Grasso is here to go over what some in Congress are proposing. But first, let's get a market check with Charlie Pellet.
And we are higher across the board, David Weston. In fact, the S&P on track for a record as the conflict between the U.S. and Iran has not escalated. Stocks are rising with the S&P up 16 now. That's a gain of 0.5% at 3269, up 0.5%. The Dow advancing 179, up 0.6%. Nasdaq is up 58, a gain there of 0.6%. Jobless claims down for the fourth week in a row, setting the stage for tomorrow morning's monthly employment report. And with more on that story, here's Bloomberg's Vinny Del Giudice.
Today's jobless claims data illustrate the wherewithal of the labor market. Claims fell to 214,000, the lowest in 5 weeks and not far from a half-century low. Looking to Friday's big report, Wall Street forecasts indicate the U.S. wrapped up 2019 with an annual employment gain topping 2 million. That said, wages remain a sore spot for workers in many industries. Vinny Del Giudice, Bloomberg Radio.
And as you know, that number breaks at 8:30 a.m. Wall Street time. We'll have complete reaction, complete coverage as the number breaks. Count on Bloomberg for the first word. And, of course, our coverage leading up to the release of that key data point. Bed Bath & Beyond shares plunging to their lowest in more than a month after the home goods retailer pulled its year forecast after third quarter results missed estimates. Bed Bath & Beyond down now by 18.8%. Also after earnings, Kohl's down 8.8%. JCPenney down 11.6%. L Brands higher now by 0.7%. The 10-year up 5/32, yield 1.85%. Gold down 0.1%, 15.54 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude up 0.1%, 59.69 a barrel. Recapping, stocks higher, on track for a record close. S&P up 16, up 0.5%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Balance of Power continues. Once again, here's your host, David Weston.
Thank you so much, Charlie Pellet. Members of Congress, and they're not just Democrats, have been none too happy about President Trump's excluding them from decision-making about attacking Iran. This is what Republican Senator Mike Lee had to say after a briefing by the administration yesterday that was supposed to bring senators up to speed.
I had hoped and expected to receive more information outlining the legal, factual, and moral justification for the attack. I was left somewhat unsatisfied on that front. Probably the worst briefing I've seen, at least on a military issue, in the 9 years I've served in the United States Senate.
And in the meantime, Congress is considering legislation that would require President Trump to stop hostilities with Iran within 30 days under the War Powers Resolution. To take us through the law, we welcome now my colleague June Grasso and Ona Hathaway. She's professor of international law at Yale. So, Professor Hathaway, first of all, just explain to us, what is the War Powers Resolution?
The War Powers Resolution is a law that was passed in 1973 after Congress discovered that President Nixon had been carrying on a secret bombing campaign in Cambodia. And they passed this law to reassert the constitutional role of Congress in making the decision about when and whether to take the nation to war.
How would it apply here? Because there were some attacks by the militia on U.S. facilities, killing a U.S. citizen. We retaliated, and we've killed now General Soleimani. The Iranians struck some 2 bases in Iran, but as far as we know, it's over now. So is there an ongoing hostility?
Well, we hope it's over now, but we don't know for sure. So it's right that the president ordered the strike against General Soleimani without so much as informing Congress before doing so. And then the Iranians, as anyone who knew the situation would have predicted, retaliated by striking our bases in Iraq. And it seems like we may be, at least for the moment, in this kind of pause. The president seems to be de-escalating, seems to be sort of putting the brakes on any further retaliation. But tensions remain really high. The chances that something else could happen are not at all slim. And as Senator Lee made clear during the briefings, the president's advisors seem to suggest that they think that he has the power to go to war on his own whenever he likes. And that has a lot of people very much concerned.
The
Congress has allowed its war powers to erode since the passage of the authorization for use of military force in 2001. And so now Congress is trying, it seems, to get some of that power back. But is the war powers resolution constitutional, or can President Trump say it's not constitutional and he has a right to defy it even if they pass it in the House and the Senate?
Some presidents have claimed that it's unconstitutional. Nixon, in particular, famously vetoed it, and then it was passed over his veto. But other presidents have accepted its constitutionality, and almost all of them have acted, quote-unquote, consistent with the War Powers Resolution, even if they think that it's not in all of its parts constitutional. So it would be pretty unprecedented for the president to just sort of flat out say, I'm not going to follow this at all. And there's not just the War Powers Resolution. There's also, of course, the U.S. Constitution, which gives Congress the power to declare war, not the president. So he'd also have to contend with the Constitution.
Well, he's done a lot of unprecedented things during his term, so we can't be sure what he'll do. But his national security advisor, Robert O'Brien, claimed that the order to kill General Soleimani was fully authorized by the 2002 law in which Congress authorized the use of force in Iraq, in addition to Trump's constitutional authority to carry out acts of self-defense. How good is that argument?
Well, the first argument is really bad. The 2002 authorization for use of military force was passed to allow President Bush to go to war in Iraq against Saddam Hussein's government. And the justification that was given to Congress at the time was Saddam Hussein has weapons of mass destruction that pose a threat to States and its allies, and he has to be stopped. And that's what Congress passed a resolution to address. So to pull it out in 2020 to address a threat not by the government of Iraq, by an Iranian official who happens to be in Iraq at the time he struck, is just kind of passing absurd. And although O'Brien made that argument, the administration seems to have kind of let that go. They sort of floated it, and a lot of people expressed extreme skepticism about it, and they haven't really repeated it since. What they have really been echoing is this idea that it was an act of self-defense. But as Senator Lee, as you quoted there, said, they really haven't been able to back that up with any kind of evidence. You can't just say it was an act of self-defense. You have to actually show that there was an imminent attack, that it was necessary to respond to, and that you didn't have time to go to Congress first and even tell them what you were planning on doing.
Professor, whether it's lawful or not, whether it's constitutional or not, is it justiciable? If really the legislature goes up against the executive on a question of whether we should be at war, whether we should be sending troops in, will the Supreme Court step in and decide that? And can they enforce their order?
Well, the courts have been really reluctant to get involved in these kinds of fights. And generally, when members of Congress have tried to challenge presidents' efforts to take the country to war without going to Congress first, the courts have said, look, we don't want to get in the middle of this. They either kicked it out on what we call standing ground, saying, look, you don't have standing, you don't have a particularized injury, you don't have a basis for bringing a lawsuit in court as a result, or they say, look, this is a political question. You really need to be fighting this out through political means. This is not something for the courts to get involved in. Chances are not bad that that's how the courts will respond again. There's one way Congress could get around that is if it acts as an institution as a whole. It might be able to get standing in court. Those previous cases were cases by either individual members of Congress or small groups of members of Congress who were bringing suit. And the court said, look, you're just a few members of Congress. Like, this is not really the right way to resolve this problem. But if the entirety of Congress or the House says, look, we have an institutionalized injury, the Constitution's not being followed, maybe the courts would be willing to hear that.
Okay, thanks so very much to my colleague June Grasso and to Yale law professor Ona Hathaway. It's official. China is going to be sending its Vice Premier Liu He to Washington next week to sign a trade agreement. Elizabeth Economy from the Council on Foreign Relations is here to tell us all about it. That's coming up on Balance of Power on Bloomberg Radio.
Hey, y'all, Jeff Foxworthy here. Now, if you've ever found yourself repeating the same thing over and over for 75 years, you might be Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
That's why I'm filling in for Smokey to switch things up, because there's a lot more to say. And I should know because my grandfather was a firefighter. And one of the things he taught me is that the people that love the outdoors the most are often the ones accidentally starting wildfires, which means always BYOB. No, bring your own bucket to the campfire. And be extra careful with things like burning yard trimmings. Don't just walk away, or chances are you might be starting a wildfire. So for the love of the outdoors, go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
Why has J.D. Power ranked Commonwealth Financial Network #1 in independent advisor satisfaction among financial investment firms for the 6th straight time? We think it comes down to one thing: you. Because it's your input and feedback that keeps us focused on what's most important to you and your clients and continually pushes us to be the best we can be. Maybe that's why we receive top marks in every category of the J.D. Power 2019 Advisor Satisfaction Survey. They named us #1 in client support, #1 in firm leadership, #1 in operational support, #1 in compensation, #1 in professional development support, and #1 in technology support. Ready to partner with the best? Call Commonwealth at 866-462-3638 or visit commonwealth.com and feel the power. Member FINRA, a registered investment advisor. For 2019 J.D. Power Award information, visit jdpower.com/award.
Right now, instead of hearing this, you could be listening to the music that keeps you moving with TuneIn Premium. Find today's biggest songs and all of your favorites commercial-free. Visit tunein.com/premium to upgrade.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards at the goal line. It's intercepted.
Listen live as the action unfolds or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught. It is in for the right side for the touchdown to Keenan.
Search NFL today.
A lot of people aren't aware that TuneIn lets you listen to the same terrestrial stations that you pick up on your FM AM dial, except you can hear them from anywhere. See all the stations broadcasting in your area. Find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
The NBA is on TuneIn Premium.
Pointer by Anthony Davis. It's good!
Each week, TuneIn picks an NBA game you just can't miss. Two of the top teams in the Western Conference go head-to-head. This Sunday, the Clippers are at the Nuggets. Tip-off is at 8 p.m. Eastern.
Three ball on the way. He got it to go! Three from the angle. Got it!
Search NBA to follow your favorite NBA team today.
Want to hear about the latest and greatest things to listen to on TuneIn? For reminders of the biggest live sports games, debates, and breaking news stories, follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to stay connected with the audio that matters to you.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Puts his head down, crashes, and
the snap is good. The hold is good. The kick is on its way. It is good!
Did you know all weekend long the NFL playoffs are on TuneIn?
In for the touchdown!
Search NFL to never miss a moment of the action.
We can't make traffic move faster during rush hour. But we can help you catch up on the news with TuneIn. With live around-the-clock news from MSNBC.
In the UK, they're significantly worse. When the president gets up to the podium...
CNBC and Fox News Talk.
The Fox News poll sizing up the race for 2020 found that each of the 5 top Democrats...
You can use your stop and go for good by staying in touch with the world. Search news to hear what's happening now.
However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically, yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management. I'm Steve Meyer, President and Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential in change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. The Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all moving higher. Stocks are rising as investor appetite for risk returned after the U.S. and Iran stepped back from the brink of war. S&P 500 index up 18, up 0.6%. The Dow up 191 points, up 0.7. NASDAQ up 64, also a gain of 0.7%. We've got the 10-year up 5/32, the yield now 1.85%. Gold down 0.2%, 15.53 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude back on the plus side, closing in on 60 once again. WTI up 0.3%, 59.81 a barrel. Brent 65.78, up by 0.5%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Back we go. Balance of Power continues. Once again, your host, also the host of Wall Street Week. Here is David Weston.
Thank you so much, Charlie Pellet. Live from the Interactive Brokers Studio. This is Balance of Power. I'm David Weston. China Vice Premier Liu He will lead a delegation to Washington next week to sign the long-awaited first phase of a U.S.-China trade deal. And President Trump said today that they're going to begin talks on the second phase immediately. To take us through what we know and what we think it will mean, we welcome now Elizabeth Economy, a senior fellow and director of Asian Studies at the Council on Foreign Relations. So thank you, Elizabeth, for being with us. First of all, let's start on phase one. What do we think we know about the phase one deal? President Trump today indicated he thinks that most of the issues will be resolved in phase one before we even get to phase two.
Well, yeah, I'd say the best part about the phase one deal is that it at least brings a temporary pause to a lot of the volatility and uncertainty that this trade war has generated over the past year and a half. But there is a reason that it's called a skinny deal, and that is because the real meat of it maybe is not too much. So if the president really believes that this is going to be the bulk of the deal, moving forward, then I think it's really not going to address many of the issues that were initially set out. What the deal does do on the positive side, frankly, is it does promise that the Chinese will, in fact, buy roughly $200 billion more worth of U.S. goods, energy goods, farm goods, over the next 2 years than they bought in 2017. And the U.S. agrees, on the other hand, to the tariffs on $120 billion worth of Chinese imports from 15% to 7.5%, while maintaining the tariff levels on the rest of the goods. In between between that, there are a number of promises, some of which Beijing has made before, others of which are really wrapped up in its already passed new foreign investment law. But things like better protection of intellectual property and a new dispute mechanism, we don't know what that really is going to look like yet. And Beijing has promised not to force U.S. companies to transfer their technology as a price of doing business, even though they say they've never done that before anyway. So we have to wait to see how much of this phase one actually is implemented over the next year or so. But the real meat of it is the agreement to buy more and the sort of drop in the tariff level.
And as you point out, Elizabeth Economy, one of the questions is, will China follow through? Because it has not had an unblemished record, I think it's fair to say, in complying with trade agreements through the years. And when there was first the outlines the deal suggested, some people question even whether on the agricultural products China could do what they appear to be promising to do. Can they buy that much?
Well, I think that related to an earlier promise that was a much larger actual purchase than what they're promising now. And again, this is going to be spread out among energy products, which can be quite expensive, right? Oil, natural gas, and farm goods and other durable goods. So it won't just be agricultural products. So I think probably the Chinese have said they can do 200 billion more over the next 2 years. I think they probably can do that.
Will it give the relief to the farmers that they've been promised?
It should. I mean, it depends, of course, on how the farm goods are divided up among, what's going to be purchased. For example, pork producers have not seen much benefit over the past couple of years. Soybean farmers have had some troubles, but have come back into a more positive position in recent months. So we'll have to wait to see exactly what the nature is of these purchases. But I think it will certainly help. Yes.
The president today, as I said, suggested that they would begin negotiations immediately, was his word, on phase two. At the same time, he said they may not get done before the election. So it sounds like they may start early, but last a long time. What are the prospects really for the phase two parts? Because as I understand it, they would require some fairly structural changes on China's part, things like subsidies for industries, some of the intellectual property and the high-tech issues that are really very important to President Xi.
Right. I think, look, phase two, we have supposedly been negotiating phase two along with phase one. This is just what we were able to achieve up until this point. It's not clear to me what is going to change in the Chinese negotiating mindset around phase two, which, as you mentioned, should deal with things like subsidies to state-owned enterprises, programs like Made in China 2025, which grant preferential treatment to domestic Chinese companies in 10 critical areas of cutting-edge technology, intellectual property efforts, real protection for intellectual property. These are things that China has very little incentive to adjust its policies. They are at the heart of the economic model. So it is not clear to me how or why the president and his negotiating team think that they're going to make much more progress in the coming months. Unless, of course, I think we manage to bring in many more countries to bring pressure to bear on China. And that's something that I think a lot of people think should be part of a stage two negotiation, is really working more closely with our allies because a more concerted effort is likely to yield a better result.
China has more on its agenda than just U.S. trade relations. Hong Kong is an ongoing issue for them. Just replaced their liaison person down in Hong Kong. How big a problem is this for the regime in Beijing?
So Hong Kong is a big problem. Certainly, they've had ongoing protests, serious, significant protests since June. They began last month over a bill that was introduced by Carrie Lam, the chief executive of Hong Kong, that basically would have permitted Beijing to extradite people from Hong Kong, not just Chinese mainland citizens, but Hong Kong citizens and other U.S. citizens and others. So anyway, they pulled that bill, but the demands from the protesters have not stopped. They want universal suffrage. They have a number of other demands on the table as well. And I think what this has signaled to Beijing, and it really has caught them by surprise, is just the depth of the dislike for the China model. Hong Kong is supposed to be governed, independently, largely independently until 2047. And they were promised a form of universal suffrage. And the people are now trying to hold Beijing to account. And so the reason that we saw the in large measure of Wang Zhimin by Luo Huining is because, in fact, he had not done a good job. Wang had not done a good job of helping the Chinese leadership understand exactly what was taking place and the source of the Hong Kong people's anxiety.
Okay, let me ask one last question. President Trump yesterday said that maybe China could help him with Iran. Any prospect of that?
I don't think so. I think the Chinese immediate reaction was that they don't want to see any more trouble in Iran. I think China has been supportive of the JCPOA, and I'm not sure what President Trump thinks the Chinese are going to be able to do. The Chinese like to do their business, but stay out of messy political negotiations.
Yeah, that sounds right. Okay, thank you so much to Elizabeth Economy of the Council on Foreign Relations. And now it's that time of day when we find out what's coming up on Bloomberg Business Week, and we have Jason Kelly here to tell us.
All right, we're going to talk a little today. Bed Bath & Beyond running into some trouble there.
Not necessarily David. A pretty picture.
Not pretty at all. They got a new CEO. He certainly has his hands full. He came from Target, so we'll see what's on his radar. Also going to talk about people fleeing New York, California, Illinois. Where are they going? Different cities, warmer cities.
Well, yeah, but I heard about Idaho cities. For California. Actually, Idaho, places like that. A lot of going to Florida.
A lot of places down south, yes.
Taxes certainly help. Okay, that's all coming up on Bloomberg Business Week with Jason Kelly and Carol Vassar. Look forward to that. In the meantime, that does it for today for Balance of Power. I'm David Weston, and this is Bloomberg Radio.
We can't make traffic move faster during rush hour. But we can help you catch up on the news with TuneIn. With live around-the-clock news from MSNBC.
In the UK, they're significantly worse. When the president gets up to the podium...
CNBC and Fox News Talk.
The Fox News poll sizing up the race for 2020 found that each of the 5 top Democrats...
You can use your stop and go for good by staying in touch with the world. Search news to hear what's happening now. You love TuneIn for live...